Hey guys! How are all of you beautiful people doing? I hope you all are having a great day. And yes, this is the next part, my Pokemon world. What would you do if you had the chance to go to a world of your choosing with the perfect start and unlimited possibilities? Well, that is what our MC received. This is a story following the birth of the strongest trainer to ever walk the planet. Going region by region, league by league, champion by champion in order to chase after his ever-fleeting sense of accomplishment. Fans scream out his name every time he enters the arena, opponents forfeit when they meet his gaze, his combat style, unforgiving to even the smallest of mistakes. Soaring above the sky itself, his figure fades from the eyes of all those who he has defeated, never to catch up. So without any delay, let's start the series. Brock was starting to get angry at the confidence and dismissive attitude that Rex was giving him. Topping himself from boiling over something so trivial, he pulled out Geodude's Pokeball ready for the battle. The referee took the field from the side and held up two flags, one red representing the challenger and one green representing the defender. Then the referee began to announce the rules. Referee: it will be a 2-on-2 battle, the challenger is allowed to switch Pokemon, the gym leader is not, the winner will be decided when both of either trainer's Pokemon are unable to battle. Are you ready? He said as he looked towards Rex. Rex nodded. Referee: are you ready? He said again, this time looking towards Brock. Brock nodded. The referee dropped the flag signaling the commencement of the battle. Rex and Brock threw their chosen Pokeballs at the same time. Brock brought out a Geodude, Rex brought out Bellsprout. The two Pokemon stared at each other for a little while before shouting at each other. Rex: this is your first battle. Bellsprout: let's make it a good one, use growth. He said quickly. Bellsprout didn't hesitate and began to use growth, which increased his attack and special attack by 1 stage. Brock couldn't let Bellsprout continue to use growth or it would end badly for Geodude. Brock: Geodude quickly, use rollout. Geodude tucked his arms in as he glowed with rock energy and began to form stones and rocks around himself as he moved forward, slowly building up speed. Rex, seeing this, smiled and voiced his command. Rex: Bellsprout, use Vine Whip in the ground in front of Geodude when he's exactly 5 meters away from you, he said as he calmly analyzed the distance necessary for his plan. Geodude continued to roll over, increasing his speed. By now he was zooming towards Bellsprout at a significant speed. As soon as it got close enough, Bellsprout used Vine Whip in the ground, making a shallow dent on the ground right in front of Geodude. Geodude didn't have time to stop as it knew something wasn't right. Brock couldn't see anything since Bellsprout was small and Geodude covered his vision. Geodude had no choice but to go through it. Rex smiled as he saw the Geodude slightly dip and then jump into the sky a couple of meters into the air. Rex: now Bellsprout, dip underneath Geodude and use Giga Drain, he said with a smile. Brock, who finally saw what happened, was astounded as well as frustrated at Rex's effective ploy. Geodude landed behind Bellsprout and began to make a very wide turn before stopping. Brock saw the Giga Drain beam going towards him and knew he had to dodge. Brock: Geodude, use rollout again and dodge, then use rock polish. He said hurriedly. As Geodude proceeded to do as Brock said, Bellsprout's Giga Drain finally landed on the place where Geodude was last. Bellsprout was upset that it took him so long to use it. Rex comforted the little guy and told him it was all right before focusing on the battle. He wanted to use Sunny Day, but it took too long for Bellsprout to make, he need to evolve. Before he could think of anything, Geodude was in front of Bellsprout again and smashed it with a rollout. Brock had just used rock polish to increase Geodude's speed and used a rollout on Bellsprout while Rex was busy thinking. Bellsprout flew back and landed on the ground. He was severely hurt by the attack. After all, it had a very weak defense. Rex cursed himself for being so incompetent. Who cares if he evolves? He needed to win with what he has. Rex, Bellsprout, get up. I'm sorry for being indecisive. It will not happen again. Now use poison powder, he said quickly. The reason was because once Geodude was using rollout, it would not be susceptible to powders as they would just be blown away by the wind while he's rolling. Brock was just about to issue a command when a cloud of purple powder spread all over the arena and surrounded Geodude. Brock panicked for a second, but it was too late to say anything as Geodude started to have a light shade of purple around his face, a clear sign of being poisoned. Brock stomped angrily before commanding Geodude again. Brock, Geodude, use rollout again, as it now did double damage due to hitting the last turn. He was sure of knocking out the Bellsprout if it made contact. Geodude struggled for a little before being able to start the rollout. Rex, seeing that the poison powder worked, clenched his fist happily. He didn't get ahead of himself though, since he saw Geodude using rollout again, this time much faster and stronger. He knew he could try the same trick again, but rollout this time was bigger as well, and Bellsprout was not strong enough to make a hole big enough to create the same effect. So he made another move. As Geodude sped towards Bellsprout, Rex voiced his command. Rex, Bellsprout, use Vine Whip right under you and launch yourself into the air, then use Giga Drain, he said. Bellsprout immediately complied, and just before Geodude made impact, Bellsprout launched itself into the air, but sadly it was still too slow and got nicked by Geodude's rollout, making it do front flips in the air before crashing into the ground. It didn't do the full damage, but still enough to hurt, and now Geodude double its damage again. Rex was mad by now. He didn't think it would be this difficult. He really overestimated the capabilities of the Bellsprout. Maybe it was too much to ask, but before he could think anymore, he saw a blinding blue light around Bellsprout. Bellsprout was equally as pissed off. He wanted to be just as strong as his friends, and they told him that they had never lost a battle, which increased the pressure of this one since he didn't want to be the first to lose. With all this pressure and peaked emotion, Bellsprout started to evolve. Rex was surprised as he didn't think he would actually achieve his goal. He already had Bellsprout's Pokeball in hand ready to call him back, but he now thought it was pointless since it was a guaranteed win. Bellsprout glowed with increased brightness as its body started to change. It lost its root-like legs and its head enlarged, but it grew much bigger than a normal Weepinbell, up to a total of 1.5 meters tall. Thanks to the system, Rex knew what new moves Weepinbell had learned, and he was surprised at the moves. It was perfect to turn this around. After Weepinbell finished evolving, his body was clear for all to see. It was much stronger than before and had the confidence to go with it. Rex, Weepinbell, that's great, well done, now let's turn this around, use Sunny Day, he said excitedly. Since Weepinbell was no longer held back by its body, it had much stronger control over its energy, and therefore made a very fast ball of bright energy and shot it to the roof of the building. Soon harsh sunlight came from above, activating Weepinbell chlorophyll ability. Its speed doubled. Rex followed up. Rex, good, now use synthesis, he said again quickly. The amount of energy that synthesis healed depended on the weather, and since the sunlight was beneficial, it healed Weepinbell almost up to full health again. Rex didn't relent and kept beefing up Weepinbell. Brock was surprised by the evolution and soon snapped out of his daze and realized the very bad circumstances he was in. He needed to finish this. The last rollout still hit, which means that a knockout is still in the book as long as it lands. Brock, Geodude, quick, use rollout again, he said hurriedly. Geo complied and surrounded itself in a massive boulder made of rock from his rock energy and whizzed towards Weeping Bill. Rex Weeping Bill use growth and then solar beam, he said with a Cheshire grin at the incoming Geodude. Weeping Bill complied and began to use growth again. It was fast and increased the effectiveness due to sunny day, from boosting 1 stage to boosting 2 stages. Right now Weeping Bill had a 3-stage boost in attack and SP attack. It was frightening, but Geodude could do nothing as it couldn't stop anymore due to momentum. Weeping Bill began to absorb the harsh sunlight and guide it in front of it and released a massive green beam of light that crashed into Geodude at almost point-blank range. That was the thing about special attacks. If you attack a special attack with a physical move, the special attack will have a clear advantage, and this is a clear example. Geodude didn't directly get sent back since his momentum was fierce. He pushed forward, but his speed dropped insanely quick and soon began to roll backwards and out of the arena and into the wall at immense speed, propelled by the solar beam. It was a clear victory, and Weeping Bill was at full health by using synthesis again while Geodude was knocked out. Brock was astounded by the last-minute reversal and stared blankly at the Geodude stuck on the wall behind him. Rex, yeah, you might have to scrap him off the wall, he said with a chuckle. He was trying to get into Brock's head since the start of the match, and slowly but surely it was working, as seen by what happened next. Brock flared up at Rex's comment and glared at him intensely. Rex pretended to shiver in fright before correcting his posture as if nothing happened, further passing off Brock. Brock returned Geodude to his Pokeball and threw out his next Pokemon Onix. Rex contemplated continuing with Weeping Bill, but he wanted to let Scyther have a battle since he didn't have one yet. On that, though, he returned Weeping Bill to his Pokeball under the confused gaze of Brock. He couldn't help but ask out of curiosity. Scyther soon appeared on the field and began to size up the big Onix in front of him arrogantly. Brock, why, you would have a massive advantage with Weeping Bill right now, he asked, genuinely confused. Rex only shrugged at the question before leisurely explaining, this was all part of the act. Rex, well, it's simple really, you're easy to beat, so I decided to use you to train my Pokemon. I hope that's all right, he said with a big smirk on his face. Brock finally lost it and his face turned purple from anger. To be looked down on this much was humiliating. Rex, bingo, he's completely lost it, he giggled as he watched Brock lose his shit. Brock lost it further seeing Rex giggling at him and immediately ordered Onix. Brock, Onix, we are burying our opponent right now, use Rock Slide, he said angrily. Rex laughed again before ordering Scyther. Rex, Scyther, let's take it easy for now, use Double Team and Focus Energy, he said calmly as he observed the Onix channeling rock energy. Scyther nodded and began to split into mirror images and surrounded Onix. Then he and all his clones began to use focus energy in sync. Brock had a grim expression on his face as he stared at what was happening. Before he could order anything, he heard Rex's voice again. Rex, what, big man? Brock can't think of a solution. My, Nurse Joy was right about you, he said insinuatingly. Brock was at a melting point, and as soon as he heard the name Nurse Joy he blew it. He was already angry, couldn't think straight, so he thought of the worst as soon as he heard that. Brock, Onix, use Rock Tomb on everything, he yelled at the top of his lungs. He was huffing and puffing as he stared at Rex. Rex, my, he really is a top-tier simp, my god, he said disapprovingly as he shook his head. Now Scyther had used 2 focus energies and had a very big crit ratio, so he moved on to the next phase of the plan. Rex, Scyther, use Leer on Onix, he said. Scyther complied and all of the Scythers on the battlefield used Leer on Onix, dropping his defense by 1 stage. Scyther kept using it even as Onix ravaged the clones. By the time that Onyx made it to the real Scyther, his defense was down by 3 stages. Even with his godly defense stat, there was a big difference, and adding to the fact that Brock was not thinking straight, he managed to get away with it. "Rex Scyther, finish this, use Night Slash," he said. Scyther immediately flashed on top of Onyx and sliced downwards twice with both blades and blasted Onyx's head to the ground. It was a double crit. It was immense damage over a concentrated area. It was devastating. Somehow Onyx pulled some heaven-defying willpower out of his ass and slowly got up. Rex was stunned and annoyed. He just wanted to finish this. Thinking up to there, he decided to be a little brutal. "Rex Scyther, use Night Slash repeatedly at full speed, spam that shit," he said vulgarly. Scyther didn't understand the terminology but understood the meaning and began to charge up big amounts of dark energy in its scythes and charged at the swaying Onyx. Brock tried to order it to move away, but Onyx was too injured and its speed was impaired. Under the immense anger, Brock stood there unable to think of a solution. He finally realized what was happening right as Scyther made impact. The repeated use of Night Slash and the consecutive successful crits completely obliterated the Onyx, sending it flying through the gym wall and into the garden behind the gym. Brock was aghast at the result and rushed to check that Onyx was all right. Luckily Onyx had monstrous defense, so he was mostly fine, though a good couple of days would be needed to heal up. Brock by now was feeling very disappointed in himself for falling into Rex's trap so easily. He could only sigh in disappointment. Rex made his way over and extended his hand. He really didn't like Brock, Ash or Misty, so he just wanted to leave. His first battle was almost a loss, and that really made him open his eyes. Sure, his Pokémon are stronger than their peers, and sure he had details on training and diets, but knowledge and experience in battle were very scarce. He really started to appreciate the value of the gyms. Brock, seeing Rex's extended hand, gave him the boulder badge, but he just had to ask. "Brock, is what you said about Nurse Joy true?" he asked expectantly. "Rex, fuck you. After all, that the only thing you care about is the opinion of a Nurse Joy. Farah, I'm out," he thought, rather pissed off at the loser in front of him. "Rex, no, I just said it to get under your skin. Your goddess doesn't hate you," he said mockingly before turning around and leaving. Brock didn't care at all about his mockery. He was already happy again that Nurse Joy didn't hate him or look down on him. Rex had just walked out of the gym when he saw that it was already midday. He didn't want to leave today for Cerulean City, so he booked himself a hotel for the night, and decided to walk around the city. It was soon night time, and Rex decided that it was a good idea to go to a fancy restaurant for a change of scenery. Naturally, there was exactly one that served the customer and their Pokémon if they had any. Rex was stunned as this was new to him. Making his way in, a young man dressed in waiter clothes came up to Rex with a smile. "Waiter, how may I be of service to you, sir?" he said lightly. "Rex, I want to book a reservation for one, and I want to know how you take care of the trainer's Pokémon," he said curiously. The waiter nodded happily and began to tell Rex about the services they provided. Apparently, it was a bit on the expensive side since Pokémon food was involved, and even though Rex didn't want to feed his Pokémon normal food, he wanted them to relax and enjoy themselves. The only problem was Gyarados. The dude was 11.5 meters tall currently. Rex, well, the problem is, I have a very big Pokémon that is around 10 meters tall. I was wondering if you have the facilities to accommodate him, he asked. The waiter was shocked but quickly calmed down before thinking for a moment. Waiter, well sir, there would be no issue with the size of the room since we have them, but you will have to upgrade to the VIP level in order to use it, he said with a slight businessman-like grin. Rex could only shake his head and sigh. Rex, very well, I'll do it. Please lead the way, he said as he felt his pocket burn. After all, it cost him $5,500 poke dollars. As soon as he got there he noticed that it was different from what he was expecting. The tables for the customers were to one side while the Pokémon rooms were on the other end and sectioned off to stop different Pokémon from fighting or causing a ruckus and disturbing some guests. Rex nodded approvingly and made his way to the table that was made ready for him. Before he sat down though he made his way to his assigned Pokémon room and released all of his Pokémon, albeit telling them to be quiet. As soon as his Pokémon came out the waiter freaked out. Gyarados was massive and blood red, a shade darker than even Shiny's, and the aura coming off of him was immense, it also attributed to his intimidatability. What was more shocking was the heavy pressure that seemed to increase gravity slightly, making one feel heavy, that originated from Machop's body. Rex saw that the waiter was pale as a sheet of paper and laughed loudly. "Rex lads, calm down, this is a reward for working hard, suppress your auras and relax," he said chuckling. Rex turned to the waiter. "Rex, sorry they're used to being pulled out during battles, don't mind them, they're very disciplined," he said, to which the waiter nodded and began to walk back to the Rex's assigned table at a seemingly much faster pace. Soon he found his seat and sat down before ordering. Rex had just begun to eat when he suddenly felt odd. Not knowing what it was, he started to look around with a fork in his mouth when he suddenly saw a woman dressed in black, walking into the restaurant VIP section. The woman in question walked in, with a pair of long legs, a black dress that stuck to her body perfectly showing off her curves, her piercing blue eyes and her black short hair with two long strands that framed her face on either side. Link https://www.reddit.com/r/comments/did_comments/i0798z//did_Elisa_for_today. Rex was stunned. He had seen beautiful women in his life before, but this was on another level. After silently admiring her beauty for a little while, he quickly came back to his sense and decided to stop paying attention. After all, they were strangers and had nothing to do with each other. Funnily, the table they allocated her was right next to the one that he was sitting at. "Waiter, Madam Elisa, please have a seat," the waiter said, lightly blushing before pulling out a chair from the table for Elisa to sit at. After taking a seat, Elisa decided to order some food before looking around the room to pass the time. Before she had turned towards Rex's direction, she heard him talking. "Rex, Elisa, gym leader from Nimbasa City and a famous supermodel from the Unova region, we don't see such a beauty around here often," he said, not turning his head as he continued to eat. "Rex, I just said I wasn't going to stick my nose in, but who the fuck cares? Although, why am I suddenly so impulsive?" he thought as he sighed silently as he continued to eat. Eliza didn't notice the sigh or his internal thoughts as she just stared at the gentleman in front of her. Long white coat, black gloves and a black turtleneck, with messy silver white hair and blue eyes, yet very refined in the way he ate. She had seen her fair share of good-looking men, but she had to admit she was impressed, but that was it. What she was more interested in was how he talked. He didn't seem to want to, yet he decided to speak. It was puzzling. "Elisa, yes, that is me indeed. May I know who you are?" she said questioningly as she stared at the man in front of her. "Rex, me? I'm just a passerby. The name's Rex. I was wondering what such a beauty is doing so far from home," he said, continuing the conversation. "Elisa, well, it's strange for someone I don't know to just be asking such questions, but I'm currently here for a fashion show that will be held a few weeks before the Indigo League. I'm just here for a long vacation until then. Does that answer your question?" she asked amusedly. Rex: yes it does, thank you. I was just curious. I was wondering if you are free later for a battle. I would like to test out the power of a gym leader from Unova if that's all right, he said confidently and without pause. Elisa was intrigued. Not once did he look towards her. It seemed rude, but she didn't quite mind as she attributed it to his arrogance. Elisa: sure, I don't see why not. I haven't battled in a little while. I will gladly accept your challenge, she said, equally as confident. Rex nodded and finally looked towards Elisa. Elisa, who saw this, made direct eye contact and saw those blue eyes staring straight at her. Rex: I'm glad. I have been made aware that I need a bit of fine-tuning when it comes to my Pokémon battle skills. I'm glad you have accepted, he said as his aura intensified. Elisa was startled. Rex saw this and was shocked at what just happened. He just broke through the first stage of aura training. Rex quickly looked towards where Machop was and felt the same sensation of pressure, albeit much greater than before. Then it suddenly disappeared, though that didn't stop it from causing the surrounding Pokémon from getting restless. Rex system: what just happened? He asked, confused. And the current event. System has analyzed and has come to the conclusion that host was at the border ready to break through at any moment, and so was Machop. It seems that it was simply a matter of coincidence, it said mechanically before being quiet again. Rex: I see, a simple coincidence. Well, it is what it is. After this Machop will be ready to evolve. I don't want to hold him back any more than I already have, since he has been growing stronger and the sudden addition of Aura Stage 1 has made it more of a reason to evolve him. At Machop's side, he was ecstatic as he felt the power inside him. He felt stronger and he felt some type of energy in his body that he couldn't move yet. He would probably get the answer from Rex after this anyway. Gyarados, Weepinbell and Scyther all looked at Machop in awe. After all, Machop was their leader and the strongest of them all by a massive margin. Machop was a modest person. He liked to win and took on Rex's competitive and determined side. Machop looked up at them and saw them with stars in their eyes as they stared at him. It made him uncomfortable, which made the rest laugh before turning around and minding their own business while eating. Machop started to really look up to Rex. It was him who gave him the chance to be this strong. He really believed that Rex could make him the strongest. The flames in his eyes burned brighter as he thought about the Machamp that he saw on TV. He really wanted to grow faster. Maybe he could find a way to convince Rex to let him evolve as he thought he was ready. Back to Elisa, she was shocked by the aura that came from Rex. She had heard about Aura Guardians, but they were incredibly rare, almost extinct, which shocked her all the more at the man in front of her. Her curiosity towards him grew, and with that, she decided to move tables and sit opposite him. Rex was surprised by the women advance, but he didn't mind as it was better to eat with company than alone. Sadly, he came to regret that decision when Elisa pelted him with question after question about how and when he started or became an Aura Guardian. Rex: fuck, how did I fuck up this bad? Why did I have to go and open up my big mouth? He cursed himself as he ambiguously answered all of her questions with lies that the system helped him conjure in order to not expose the system. And so like that they spent the next hour and a half chatting. They talked about Aura Guardians and their rarity, which surprised him, to fashion and their interests, and finally it was time to pay the bill and leave. After doing so, Rex collected his Pokémon and so did Elisa, and they both headed towards the rentable 24-hour battlegrounds for sparring. Elisa: this will be a one-on-one battle, no switching, and the first Pokémon to faint loses. Any objections? She asked with a smile. Rex smiled back and shook his head, showing he had no problems with the rules. They both pulled out their chosen Pokémon and threw them at the same time. Machop and Zebstrika came out and both roared at their opponents. Elissa was surprised by the color of his Machop but was then shocked at feeling the same aura from him as she did from Rex. Elissa, fascinating. It seems you have found a way to train your Machop with aura as well, she said, smiling slightly. Rex only shrugged. It doesn't really matter, he's strong, that's all that counts. Rex Machop, let's have some fun, use bulk up, he said before smiling. Machop also copied Rex's classic smile and used the move bulk up. Elissa just realized how tall this Machop was. It was a freak of nature, standing at 1.5 meters tall. Almost as tall as her Zebstrika. Without delay she chose to move. Elissa Zebstrika use flame charge. Zebstrika nodded and rose up to his hind legs before neighing loudly and then running towards Machop at a fast pace, incrementing in speed steadily. Rex smiled at this and commanded Machop again. Rex Machop, run at it and use vital throw, he said calmly. Rex had learned his lesson and didn't underestimate his opponent, even though there was close to zero chance of losing with a monster like Machop. Machop raced towards Zebstrika at an incredibly fast pace. They soon ran into each other and Machop got hit by Zebstrika head. Surprisingly, he didn't get knocked back. He stood there grinning as he stared right into Zebstrika's eyes before wrapping his arms around its neck and suddenly began to spin. Before Zebstrika could do anything, Machop loosened his grip and sent Zebstrika flying 20 meters into the air before crashing down again. Elissa was shocked at the power behind Machop and so was Rex. Rex, what in the actual fuck is going on? Is the strength increment from aura that big? He thought to himself. Before he could command again and finish, Machop began to glow slightly. He tried to hold it off while looking at Rex, trying to convey something. Rex somehow understood what he meant. He attributed it to the aura increase and only nodded. Machop equally understood what Rex meant and was extremely happy as he stopped fighting back and let the glow encase him completely. It was insanely bright, brighter than most evolutions, which surprised Rex. Rex was surprised by the amount of light coming off of this evolution, but the system said that due to it being made by God there would be many differences from a normal evolution. He soon saw the glow subside and a Pokemon emerged with terrifying amounts of energy radiating from him. Machoke slowly emerged from the glowing light. He was much taller, 1.8 meters to be exact. His skin looked like it was reinforced with armor, muscles were bulging and massive, resembling the Hulk's. His hands grew bigger and his fingers longer. From his forearms, 3 small sharp hook-like blades came out, hooking towards his fists. Closely resembling Batman's but reversed in direction. His color didn't change but instead got darker, as if you were staring off into the abyss. His small blades on his forearms turned golden as well. His eyes changed to a shade of deep purple from the golden ones before. Rex was pleasantly surprised as he thought that he would just evolve Machop at a later time while making their way to Cerulean City. It didn't really matter anymore though. Rex system pull up Machoke's stats. Name, Machoke, the superpower Pokemon. O level, 28. O bond, 90%. O height, 1.8 m. O HP, 160. O attack, 210. O defense, 141. O SP. ATK, 90. O SP. Definite, 121. O speed, 188. O ability, no god, Iron Fist. O moves: A, Bullet Punch, Counter, Revenge, Leer, Tackle, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch, Fire Punch, Light Screen, Close Combat, Dual Chop, Bulk Up, Vital Throw, Ice Fire Fusion, Blast Cannon, Physical, Crush Grip. Rex was surprised to see Crush Grip, since according to his knowledge of the game that was not a move he could learn. Not that it mattered anyway, one extra move was never a bad thing, and Crush Grip is an amazing move when catching trainers off guard or simply wanting to finish the fight before it starts. As a signature move of Regigigas, Rex had to ask why he had it though. Rex system, why does he have Crush Grip? The reason Machoke has Crush Grip is due to its ancestor DNA. Machamp species are much larger than the current ones. They average, according to research done by scientists here, are about 3-3.5 meters tall, and the most talented reaching 4 to 5 meters, dwarfing Regigigas. It is not uncommon for Pokémon of that size to learn such moves, and since Machoke is expected to grow to a much larger size, its hands are already much bigger. Naturally, it will have to use both hands to use Crush Grip in its current evolution, but the damage is the same. Crush Grip bases the amount of damage according to the HP of the opponent. The higher it is, the stronger the move. Rex was happy with the response as it made sense. Regigigas was about 3.7 meters in size and naturally has big hands, which allowed it to learn such a move. It seems that the ancient Machamp line had a much bigger potential size than the Regis. The biggest size according to the system can rival some legendary Pokémon on pure power alone with the use of moves. It is recommended that the host increase the intensity of Machoke's training to maximize its potential. Rex was again astonished at the power of Machamps and was excited to see how far Machamp could go, but that was far into the future. Right now he had to beat Elisa. Elisa was equally as astonished by the size of the Machoke after evolving, and even more shocked at the aura that was coming off of it. It made her tense, and therefore she increased her seriousness for this battle. Luckily Zebstrika didn't take too much damage from the hit and got up fairly quickly. Elisa, Zebstrika, use Flame Charge again, she said. Rex Machoke let get come close and use Crush Grip, he said excitedly. He really wanted to know how the move would look since it was different from Regigigas, since it required both hands. Machoke nodded and waited for the speeding Zebstrika to come into its optimal range before striking. Its stats had a big boost and his speed was outrageous for his species, so he was confident that he could catch Zebstrika. Soon Zebstrika reached Machoke and was ready to headbutt him at full force. Sadly it didn't go the way it was supposed to. It suddenly saw the shadow of Machoke's hands looming over his face before feeling immense pressure from his neck. It immediately stopped moving. The air it tried to breathe in got stuck since its windpipe was being squeezed like Play-Doh. Machoke lifted up Zebstrika with both hands wrapped around its neck as it squeezed harder, before slamming it into the ground with great force. Machoke then retreated back to avoid any surprises. After all, during training with Gyarados, he would get hit by plenty of sneak attacks after he slammed Gyarados into the ground, so he began to learn his lesson. Rex nodded, seeing Machoke's actions. It seemed that telling Gyarados to use underhand methods was the right thing to do. He wanted to increase the vigilance his Pokémon had in battles and even when they were training, since anything could happen. Elisa was shocked and worried, seeing Zebstrika trying to get up and coughing roughly. She knew that she couldn't take another one of those hits. After all, she had never seen that mover before, therefore didn't know its specific use. After all, Regigigas didn't really fight and she wasn't from Huen, so it was understandable. Seeing Zebstrika finally get up, she decided to change it up. Elisa, Zebstrika, use Electric Terrain, then use Charge, she ordered quickly. That last attack had drained at least 3/4 THS of Zebstrika's health, so she had to buff her Pokémon up in order to turn it around. Rex smiled and simply ordered Machoke again. Rex Machoke, use Thunder Punch, he commanded calmly. Machoke nodded and began to charge up energy into his fists before sparks began to fly. His fists turned yellow as electricity surged and covered his arms and increases his bodily speed and reaction time. The electricity soon turned a light blue before slowly getting dark and settling at dark blue lightning. This was the second stage of electricity energy, meaning that it was stronger than normal yellow ones. Rex was slightly surprised since he had been working with Machoke on increasing the quality of his ice and thunder punches since they had their added effects. He had achieved mild success with Ice Punch since he had achieved a better support AoE type effect where it had a bubble-like effect where it slowed down the speed of incoming physical attacks or Pokémon. But there was a downside, it decreased Machoke's speed since he was covered in much higher quality ice energy. Sure, it was his energy, but his body was still not powerful enough to sustain it without side effects. Naturally, he hoped that that side effect was gone since his body was much more resilient. This would hopefully be the case until Machoke increased the quality again and resulted in side effects, but again, that was for the future. The same thing happened when he trained Thunder Punch. His body was able to produce light blue energy, but his body would overload with stimuli and would run out of energy and faint extremely quickly. That was why Rex wanted to evolve Machoke, and it seemed like Machoke had the same idea. But it seemed that it was no longer an issue. Elisa, on the other hand, was stupefied as she was an electric-type gym leader. She had heard of different color energy depending on the strength of the Pokémon and their efficient use of energy, but it was very rare. As an electric-type master, she only had one Pokémon, a Luxray with dark purple lightning energy, and even then it took her a very long time since Luxray had been with her since she was a child. She couldn't believe that a fighting-type Pokémon could get such mastery at such a young age. Especially since typings also influence the difficulty of mastering energy and converting it into another typing. She was astonished and also scared as she looked at the monster in front of her that was rushing at demon speeds. She had no time to react before Machoke had appeared on the weakened Zebstrika. A punch landed on Zebstrika's head, smashing it into the ground from the force and cracking the sturdy ground. Machoke once again retreated, which proved to be the right choice as just a second later Zebstrika jumped up and used Wild Charge. Machoke tried to dodge, but its ability was a double-edged sword, so all he could do was attempt to block the hit. But it was too fast. Zebstrika wrapped around the back of Machoke and slammed into him at full force. Machoke was sent barreling forwards before crashing into the ground. Rex clenched his fists. He forgot about Zebstrika's ability, and there was also the possibility of having Sap Sipper. He was too focused on using the terrain that he forgot about some other details. Rex was mad for making such a rookie mistake and made a mental note to remember and avoid making such a mistake a second time. Rex, Machoke, you're fine, right? Let's try out our special move, ha ha ha. Elisa was curious about what it could be, so she decided to see what it was. Elisa, Zebstrika, use agility and boost your speed. She said. She was curious but not stupid. Rex smiled at Elisa's move. It was smart, but it would not save her. He was even frightened by the idea of using the move since it could cause massive destruction. Luckily there was a shield and the battlefield was reinforced. Machoke, listening to Rex, laughed and grinned evilly as he stared at Zebstrika like a predator looks at prey. Zebstrika, seeing the look on Machoke, got slightly startled and retreated half a step subconsciously. Machoke kept smiling as terrifying amounts of energy circulated towards his two fists before turning into opposite energies. He was stronger, but the effect afterwards was almost the same since his energy quality was higher, so was the toll on the body in order to maintain it, and on top of that they were contrasting energy, making it more difficult. A massive torrent of high-pressure air swirled around Machoke as his left arm blazed up with a massive amount of blue fire. The blistering heat made Zebstrika, Elisa and even Rex uncomfortable. It was like being chucked into an oven. Then a massive torrent of cold air swept, countering the heat, and covered Marchoke's hand in thick ice before creeping up and covering his arm as if wearing an oversized gauntlet. The two clashing waves of wind swept, and intensified the already chaotic scene. Elisa was struck dumb. What is that? Why is so strong, and that wind? It's like it's trying to protect him from damage, she thought as she observed the changes. Rex smiled with glee as he observed. The move was the same, but the magnitude and scale of it went up a notch. Rex grinned as he stared at Elisa. Elisa saw the look Rex gave her and shuddered as a bad premonition crept into her mind. But it was too late, there was no stopping it. Rex, ha ha ha, damn, I never get tired of seeing it. Marchoke, let's end this, use blast cannon, he yelled, the last part incredibly excited at the prospect of the move. Elisa was once again curious about the move but was now utterly scared due to what was happening. Marchoke stretched out his right hand and pointed his palm towards Zebstrika. The fire and ice energies merged and Marchoke's hand began to glow white and blue before a horrendous amount of air swept forward. The cold air heated up incredibly quickly, almost instantly, and shot forward in a more precise way than last time. Elisa was aghast at what was happening. She couldn't catch a breath due to the high air pressure. It was like sticking your head out the window of your car at 200 km/h and trying to breathe. Good luck. She couldn't voice out anything as well due to the wind, and the only thing she saw was white before a shadow shot past her head and smashed into the concrete wall behind her. The wall cracked and finally splintered into dozens of large and small pieces. The shadow was covered in a cloud of dust obscuring everyone's vision. The still high air pressure soon swept it away, and all they could see was a Zebstrika lodged into the wall 5 meters in. It was like someone decided to dig a hole into the wall, and inside they found Zebstrika. Elisa was flabbergasted at the result. She looked at Zebstrika that was lodged into the wall with fear. She turned her head towards Marchoke only to see him panting while holding his knees, exhausted by the move. It was commendable though, since he didn't faint right away, which Rex was happy about. Rex made his way over to Zebstrika to see if it was okay, since it was an extremely powerful move that perfectly scaled with the user's strength. Seeing that Zebstrika was okay and only injured, he sighed in relief before looking towards Elisa. Rex, sorry, wanted to see how powerful my move, he said with a guilty look. After all, he was aware that Zebstrika was going to most likely get curb stomped into next week, but he didn't know it was going to be this powerful. He could only look at Elisa apologetically before ushering Marchoke back into his pokeball. Elisa, honestly, I don't blame you. It was a Pokemon battle and Pokemon get hurt, it's no big deal. What I'm interested in is your Marchoke and that absurd set of moves you just pulled, she said curiously. She said this as she made her way over to Zebstrika and returned him to his Pokeball before walking back towards Rex. Rex, that is a secret, I'm sorry, but I can tell you that it is a new move that me and Marchoke have created, he said. Elisa was surprised to hear that and didn't take long to nod in acknowledgement, as she had never seen a move like that. Elisa had a growing interest in the man in front of her, as he had shown her one surprise after another. Elisa, I understand, but you owe me one for the damage you caused Zebstrika, she said with a grin. Rex couldn't help but nod, since he felt guilty about the damage he caused Zebstrika. Rex, what would you want? he asked. Elisa, simple, I will be here for a couple of months and I will be traveling around the cities. If we meet again, take me out for dinner and then let's have another battle. Next time I will be using my strongest Pokemon, I suggest you do the same, she said confidently. Rex was surprised by her forwardness, as he pretty much got asked for a date and then another a swooping. Rex nodded in acknowledgement. Rex, well, I agree, but I must get going since I have to continue on my way tomorrow. What hotel are you staying at? I'll walk you there, he said in a gentlemanly way. Elisa was surprised but nodded and voiced out her hotel. Rex was surprised since they were at the same hotel, which made it more convenient for him. They both made their way over to the hotel and parted ways. Rex made his way into his room, took off his shirt and went to bed, but before he could lay down he heard the doorbell ring. Wondering if Elisa forgot something, he made his way over and opened the door to find Elisa still in her dress staring at him with a blush. "Rex, what's wrong?" he asked, seeing her reaction. Elisa blushed and pointed at his chest. Rex looked down only to see his bare chest and understood. "Rex, oh. Hold on a sec," he said hurriedly before turning to put his shirt on again and coming back. Elisa took this time to calm down and handed Rex a note when he came back. Rex looked at the series of numbers on the piece of paper. He knew it was her number. "Elisa, this is my number. I assumed you are challenging the gyms, so you'll be passing through Vermilion City. I'll be staying there in about 1.5 weeks, so when you get there give me a call and we can chat," she said with a slight blush before walking away. Rex was stunned by the woman's straightforwardness. He scored without even trying. He waved her goodbye and walked to the mirror in his room. "Rex, what the fuck, is it my face?" he asked himself. He couldn't quite comprehend what happened and could only shrug and go off to bed. Elisa, on the other hand, was blushing when she got to her room and held her cheeks. "Elisa, why did I do that? What came over me? I'm never this emotional," she commented before heading off to bed. Rex woke up the next day and had breakfast downstairs at a restaurant in the hotel before heading out. He didn't bother to say goodbye since she probably wasn't there anyway. He got on his bike and pedaled out of Pewter City and onto Route 3. He wasn't planning to catch any Pokemon on this route since he already had enough. For now, he would spend a couple of days passing through Route Mount Moon and Route 4 before arriving at Cerulean City, where he would fight with the three sisters. Rex wanted to catch a certain Pokemon at Mount Moon, which would be a great addition to his team while training for the next gym battle. As Rex moved through Route 3 somewhere else in Viridian City. Team Rocket Lair under Viridian City Gym. Giovanni was sitting in his chair looking at a screen watching a man and a black Machop breaking the legs of his grunts. "Giovanni, tch damn punk, why get in my way? You just had to meddle in something that's none of your business. And of top of that, that fucking freak from the underworld is heading over here. What a fucking monster, and you brought him over with your trash Pokemon. Shit, I hope he doesn't meddle in my stuff. I don't want him finding out about Mewtwo, otherwise he might want it. I'll make sure to make you and that underworld punk pay for looking down on me." Before he could say any more, noise came from the screen and a shadow appeared. "Mystery Man, good afternoon Giovanni, how are things over there? I will be arriving in a couple of weeks. I hope you can reserve a place for me while there," he said. "Giovanni, not at all sir, there is plenty of top-notch hotels and I happen to own one of the 5-star ones with a suite that is usually reserved for champions of regions when they stay over here in Viridian City," he said subserviently. "Mystery Man, I'm glad Giovanni, have a pleasant day," he said before cancelling the call. "Giovanni fucking wacko, I swear I will get my payback for back then," he said with hatred before he walked out of his room. "Somewhere on an island. Mystery Man, ah ha ha, you think I don't know you're cursing me, Giovanni. I saved you and paid for the little project you tried to hide from me. It doesn't matter though, you will get your retribution, and I won't even have to move a finger. he said while laughing as he stared at the image of a black Machoke on the screen using blast cannon. Powerful move, sadly I don't know how he did it, maybe I'll squeeze it out of him at some point, could be useful, don't you think Umbra? He said as he looked at the four-armed Colossus Pokémon staring at the video of Machoke using blast cannon on repeat. The Pokémon didn't turn around but nodded in affirmation, he never took his eyes off of the screen. The man just smiled looking at him act that way. Mystery man interesting as ever Rex Pierce, show me what you can do. He grinned. Rex rode his bike down the muddy dirt road. He had been cycling on and off for about a day already. He had trained his Pokémon and adjusted his mindset. He was currently thinking about what his goals were and what Pokémon to use at the Cerulean Gym. His Pokémon were pretty overpowered but he didn't want to use the same Pokémon 2 times in a row, so he would probably be going with Machoke and Gyarados. As Rex made his way further, the bike began to slip and before he knew it his face was in the mud and his bike overturned. Rex, fuck, just my luck and now I'm all muddy, he said with a grim expression. He pulled his bike out of the mud and moved to the side of the road and under the cover of a couple of trees. Rex pulled out his tent from the inventory and began to set it up. He pulled out his Pokeballs and released all of his Pokémon to wander around and scare off most of the other wild Pokémon in the surroundings. Rex, it seems that I will have to wait it out until the rain stops and the ground hardens, otherwise my face will be in the mud for a while, he said before sitting down with Machoke and beginning their next phase of aura training. The system said that the next step requires the user to move the aura in their bodies at free will and that once this is mastered, there will not only be a big increase in the power of moves, but another increase in the user's physique. Rex had by now noticed that he was able to pedal much faster and longer than before, even when using a high gear. This meant that he would have to increase the training. It was also seen in the monstrous stats of Machoke. Rex spent a couple of hours doing this before going back and increasing the training of all his Pokémon and teaching them new moves. For Gyarados, he was teaching him Hurricane since his rain dance would allow it to hit regardless of accuracy. For Weepinbell and Scyther he was teaching them Protect. Protect was a move that was more universal here. According to the system, most Pokémon could learn the move, and since slow-moving Pokémon or Pokémon caught off guard can use it to protect themselves, he was more than happy to teach it. Rex pulled out his weights that had been modified by the system and began to do his physical workout. After the move training, all of them sat down in a circle and began to meditate and improve the quality and control over their energies. They had seen Machoke in action and they were mortified by it, but also secretly motivated to strive to his level. Rex soon went off to be, but his Pokémon huddled into a corner and spoke to each other. Machoke, guys listen, Rex is trying really hard, we can all see that. We need to train harder. Weepinbell, don't worry about almost losing, Rex has been thinking about it for a little and blames himself, so work harder. Gyarados, you're doing great, but you need to increase the effectiveness of rain dance according to what Rex said, since that will massively increase your survivability. Scyther, you need to make sure that you train really hard and max out your potential, since you will be able to evolve when you do. It is all up to you. Gyarados, Master has been training me since ages ago, and I'm grateful for that. There is no need to worry, I will try my hardest. Weepinbell, I know Machoke, but I've let down Rex. I acted all brave when I met him, but then I go and perform like that, it's embarrassing. I almost made Rex lose face, he said disheartening. Machoke, I will tell you a secret, I almost lost a battle to Raticate when I and Rex first arrived. You need to understand that being brave is good, but you need the power to back it up. and power is that Rex can give you if you train hard. Don't let me and everyone else down, especially Rex, we all believe you, he said encouragingly. Weeping Bill's mood increased and he was happy but also determined to prove Machoke right. Scyther, relax Machoke, I've always been strong and I will continue to improve regardless of what you say. You will lose someday and it will be to me, I swear on it, he said arrogantly before walking off into the woods. Machoke, where are you going? He asked. Scyther, to check the surroundings again and make sure that Rex is safe while he sleeps, HMPH, he said before disappearing into the dark. Machoke, that guy, sigh, he acts all tough and arrogant but he has a good heart. But he has a good point, all of you should do the same and do a quick patrol before returning and sleeping. I will stay by Rex's side, he said before walking over to the tent, sitting down and meditating again. All the Pokémon nodded and went off in different directions. The next morning Rex woke up and found all of his Pokémon up and training again. Some were practicing their moves, some were meditating. Rex smiled at the sight and began to make breakfast before heading out to Mount Moon. After packing up he found the road nice and dry and rideable, so he called back all of his Pokémon and rode his bike towards the massive mountain that was getting bigger the closer he got. Rex arrived at the entrance of the cave from which he needed to pass in order to make it to Cerulean City. Getting ready and making sure that everything was ready, he stored his bike into his inventory and walked into the cave. Rex made his way through the mountain cave that ran through MNT Moon and looped back towards Route 4 before heading to Cerulean City. As he walked through he encountered Zubats, Geodudes, Golbats, even a Graveler. He had Machoke with him as he traveled since he needed his trusted brother with him in case of any trouble. A wise choice to say the least, since they soon came upon the sound of explosions, muffled screams and footsteps everywhere. Rex hid behind a corner and peered out to see what was going on. It was the Team Rocket dumbass again. Rex cursed under his breath at his bad luck and once again re-evaluated if his luck was just as shit as Ash's. Commander, hurry up, we need these fossils excavated quickly. Deal with the Onyx immediately, preferably catch it, it's bigger than those of its species. He commanded as he pointed here and there while the other grunts followed. Rex sighed as he knew this is going nowhere. He wasn't going to be able to get through without facing them. Just as he was about to walk out he found a knocked out man by a rock dressed in a lab coat. Thinking that maybe he could get something out of him, Rex walked over and woke him up with a couple of hard slaps. The man woke up groggy and looked around in confusion before remembering something and beginning to panic. Before he could scream he was punched in the face by Rex and collapsed to the floor. Rex, let's try that again, shall we? I talk, you answer. You stall, I smash your face, understand? He said grimly. He was annoyed that this guy almost made things worse by screaming out like a bitch. The nerdy-looking man stared at Rex with visible hate before begrudgingly talking under the threat of the almost 2 meters tall black hulking figure cracking his knuckles behind Rex. It was like Rex's shadow had come to life. Machoke's yellow eyes glowed with cold light. The nerd almost shit himself and started to spill the beans. It turned out that Team Rocket had arrived after they found out that this nerdy lad had discovered fossils here. Rex, no wonder, then I'm not surprised at all. These pesky Team Rocket dumbasses try to get their hands on everything they can. They're really getting on my nerves, he thought as he clenched his hand, which caused the cracking of his knuckles. Rex didn't even bother to ask for the details on their numbers or anything. He had enough of being disturbed by these fools. He got up, kicked the nerd in the face and knocked him out again before walking towards the grunts who were running around in a craze with cold eyes. Rex, Machoke, hold back and don't kill them, I don't want to deal with the blood later. Use Thunder Punch and stun them," he said, still walking calmly as if he was strolling at the park. Machoke nodded and grinned before disappearing in a blur of blue lightning before appearing again in front of a grunt and smashing his face. The grunts heard the sound of something cracking before turning in the direction of the noise. They found a guy with silver hair, dressed in white and black with his hands in his pockets as he calmly walked towards them. Meanwhile, a black figure could be spotted zooming around at incredible speeds covered in lightning as he punched all the grunts to the ground or lodged them into the walls from his punches. Rex's cold gaze swept over them, seemingly watching as a spectator as they get sent flying in front of his face. A grunt quickly came to, and sent his Arbok to attack Rex. Rex didn't change direction and continued to walk and only muttered 2 words. Rex Fire Punch before going silent again. Out of nowhere, a shadow appeared on top of Arbok that burned with blue fire before smashing the head of the snake into the ground. Rex walked on top of the head of the knocked out Arbok without stopping, seemingly unfazed by the destruction. Before the grunt could even recall his Pokémon, the same shadow appeared, punched him straight in the stomach with an uppercut, sending him blasting into the roof where he dangled from bleeding. "Rex, you just had to get in my way, you dogs," he said, incredibly vexed as he made his way forward while gazing at the surrounding grunts that fell one by one at the hands of Machoke. The commander finally noticed, but before he could say anything, Rex pulled out Scyther's Pokeball and sent him out. Scyther had grown to almost 1.9 meters, massive compared to its species. "Rex, Scyther, use Tackle," he said lazily before walking past where the commander was. Before the commander could even think, he was already flying and smashed into a wall where he now lay with his arms and legs in different unnatural shapes. Rex pointed the Pokeball at Scyther and recalled him. Machoke appeared again and resumed walking beside Rex. All the remaining grunts could be seen deep in the ground, in the walls and occasionally stuck in the ceiling, dangling there. Rex didn't care, he was focused on the Pokémon that was in front of him. A massive Onix towering at 15 meters. He was even bigger than Rex's Gyarados. Rex thought about Bruno's Onix, but that was caught in Mount Hideaway, so it couldn't be the same one, right? Unless it moved away because of this incident. He looked closely and found a hand-shaped scar on the right side of its face. Rex knew that it was indeed Bruno's Onix. Sadly for Bruno, he would miss the chance to get such a beast of a Pokémon since Rex was nowhere. Rex decided to catch it since he wanted a massive tank of a Pokémon, and who better than Steelix? Making up his mind, he walked confidently and without fear towards the wary Onix. "Rex, relax, big guy, if I wanted to hurt you, you wouldn't be able to stop me," he said with a smile as he made direct eye contact with Onix. Onix didn't seem to believe him as he stared at Rex. Rex, seeing the skeptic look, only laughed loudly before clapping his hands lightly. Machoke, who was behind him, already knew that Rex wanted and vanished from his spot in an instant before spreading in front of Onix's head in midair. Machoke used Bullet Punch and sent the supposedly heavy Onix flying before crashing into the wall. Machoke didn't stop there and vanished again while in midair and appearing in front of Onix's tail and grabbing it. Machoke used Vital Throw and swung him from left to right. Like what Hulk did to Loki and Thor, by the time that Machoke stopped, Onix was almost unconscious. Machoke severely held back with his attack since he understood that Rex only wanted to demonstrate his power. Rex was very satisfied with Machoke and his strength, but most importantly his intelligence. Rex stretched out his fist and bumped it with Machoke's before looking back towards the Onix, who was staring at Rex in fear. "Rex, like I said, if I wanted to hurt you I don't need to try much," he said with a chuckle. Onix finally agreed with him before being stunned by what Rex said next. Rex, that being said, why don't you join me and you can get stronger just like my buddy Machoke here? He asked leisurely at Onyx. Onyx didn't really need to think much before he agreed, and Rex pulled out a pokeball. Before Onyx went up to him though, it ran into a segmented part of the cave behind him. Rex, he's running away, he questioned himself before seeing that Machoke was about to run and drag him back. Relax buddy, let's just follow, he can run from us anyway, he said as he patted Machoke's shoulder before walking ahead. Soon they made their way forward while following the tracks of the massive Onyx. They came out of an exit and looked around. It opened up but it was still dark, it seemed that it was still underground. The interesting thing was that the wall was made out of this black rock substance. Rex, system, analyze the rocks here and tell me what they are, he ordered before continuing forward where he saw the Onyx looking for something. Just before Onyx turned around he heard the sound of the system. System has completed the scan and has found that the host is currently inside a very small meteor that seemed to have been a part of a bigger one that crashed here ages ago. That is all the system could find, it said mechanically before staying quiet. Rex, a meteor. Wherefore he was cut off when he saw what Onyx was carrying. It was a shiny stone that glowed with a silver hue. Rex immediately knew what it was and was stunned speechless. A mega stone, and it seems to be a mega stone for Steelix, the reason Onyx found it. Maybe he likes the stone. It's highly unlikely that he feels a connection since only the Pokémon that is in its final stage of evolution would feel a connection to their respective mega stones. Rex picked out the stone and looked at it before getting the system to identify what Pokémon this mega stone was for. System has found that this stone will allow Mega Steelix to evolve, it said. Rex was stunned and excited at the same time since he now had another powerful future team member. He stored it away and looked at Onyx and held out the Pokeball. This time Onyx was more than happy to accept. Rex threw the Pokeball and caught Onyx without a fuss. After having caught Onyx, Rex and Machoke made their way forward and came across the nerd who had woken up. He looked at Rex indignantly, but when he saw his fossils being handed back to him he was overjoyed and attempted to hug Rex, only to get a boot to the face. After getting rid of the pesky nerd, Rex finally exited the cave and entered Route 4. It was already getting dark and Rex decided to take a rest and build the camp and released his Pokémon to run around and do a quick patrol over the area while Rex made dinner for them. Rex was talking to the system in order to find out what would be the most optimal diet for Onyx and soon came to the conclusion. Rex had to stick with an augmented diet that mostly suited him until he got to Cerulean City, where he could buy high-quality metals and minerals that can be found in the ground to make the most optimal diet for Onyx. Rex soon finished making dinner and distributed it to the Pokémon before taking Onyx and going further away for some training. Rex called up the system and asked it to scan Onyx's stats. Name: Onyx, the rock snake Pokémon. O level: 22. O bond: 65%. O height: 15 m. O HP: 75. O attack: 85. O defense: 230. OSP: ATK: 70. OSP: Definite: 85. O speed: 90. O ability: Rock Head. O moveset: Sandstorm, Bite, Rollout, Rock Polish, Rock Slide, Sand Tomb, Stealth Rocks. Rex was pleasantly surprised by the number of moves Onyx learned by himself, and he had a good idea of what to do with him. Rex decided to make him into an ungodly shield for the team, something that others can only dread, an undefeatable setup Pokémon. Rex chuckled at his idea and grinned evilly. Onyx got scared by the face Rex made, and with good reason, since for the next hour, he had to tank Gyarados' Hurricane while Rain Dance was activated. His special defense would rise at some point. Machoke, who was seeing Onix going through this, smiled and thought to have a chat with him after training while Rex was asleep. A few days ago he and Rex had a chat in which they decided to do the good cop bad cop routine. Rex would push his Pokémon but act nice, and then Machoke would do a secret training session where he would put Onix through hell. Onix would try harder in the normal sessions and Machoke would slowly back off. The idea was genius since it was implemented with Scyther before. Scyther, who saw Onix going through something similar to what he did, and then seeing the evil grin plastered on Machoke's face, gave an involuntary shudder. Machoke turned his head towards Scyther suddenly, still sporting the same smile. Scyther vanished into the darkness under the excuse of hearing a noise. Machoke knew he did a good job with Scyther, just look how scared he is. He turned towards Rex with a warm smile before closing them to continue meditating. Soon Rex went to sleep and Machoke put his plan into action. That night, if you listened carefully, you could hear the sound of rocks clanging together. It was Onix who was shivering in fright every time he looked at Machoke. Rex smiled at the sound and went to sleep. He would give a treat to Onix for behaving well and then fell asleep. The night quickly passed and Rex soon woke up to the annoying sounds of Spearows yelling. Rex couldn't take it anymore and yelled at the top of his lungs. Rex, Machoke fucking shut them up. He yelled before turning around to continue sleeping. His roar was naturally heard by Machoke, who suddenly smiled as the vein on his forehead popped. He was getting sick of these flying rats as well but tolerated it. Though he knew Rex couldn't, so he already warmed up in advance. He smiled and blurred away. Soon the sounds of slaps were heard before a small tremor could be felt. This happened another 30 times before Machoke walked back while holding his right shoulder while his right arms made circles. Peacefulness reigned again and Rex could finally sleep for another 2 hours before getting up at 10 in the morning. When he woke up and walked out, he saw all of his Pokémon training. Machoke was training with Onix, but unlike the night before, this time, it was gentle and much more productive. Rex smiled and ushered them in for breakfast before recalling them all except Machoke. He decided to walk for a while this morning to enjoy nature along with his best friend. Machoke seemed to enjoy it as well. He was much calmer since he finished slapping more than 30 birds out of the sky. He walked side by side with Rex as he heard stories from Rex from his previous life. Machoke was surprised that Rex had lived before, since this was new knowledge to him. The reason Rex told him was that he trusted Machoke completely, and the only way to increase trust and bond between people and Pokémon is to share your secrets and vulnerabilities. Machoke, even though he couldn't speak, made himself clear that he enjoyed the stories before returning to his Pokeball. Rex pulled out his bike and rode towards Cerulean City. He would need a couple of days to get there and he would make sure to train his Pokémon as much as possible. Onix was sure as shit not going to be used in the next fight. It was going to be Machoke and Gyarados for this fight. Gyarados was still growing fast and had reached 13 meters tall. Machoke was 2, he had reached almost 2 meters where the system said that he would most likely plateau off. Rex wasn't worried about it and continued forward. He fought many trainers along the way. He even challenged Officer Jenny to a fight. It was a difficult fight for Onix against Arcanine, who was immensely powerful. Sure, Onix had the type advantage, but Onix couldn't land a single hit. Rex had to fall back on cheesing his way through, using Sandstorm to hurt Arcanine and Rock Slides to limit movement options before finishing it off with a couple of rollouts. After beating Officer Jenny, he moved on, and continued to cycle towards Cerulean City. Along the way, he continued to find opponents ranging from skilled to complete amateurs, but it was all good practice for Rex since any experience would be helpful. Some weak trainers he fought proved to be very interesting adversaries as he learned new ways to use moves to increase his advantage. He fought with all his Pokémon. Machoke always sped forward and usually toyed with his opponent in order to see if they had anything interesting to show. If they didn't, he would end the fight. Rex didn't really have to command Machoke as his battle experience and intelligence was the same or even above that of some adults. Rex did his daily aura training and was beginning to move it towards a specific point. He still lacked the precision or the quantity, but it was an improvement. He would train with Onyx and find new ways to use his moves to increase his field advantage. He found that using Sunstorm would completely hinder the trainer's vision. So he thought, why not mix it with Stealth Rocks secretly? It was a good setup move and the opposition would not know about it. He decided to make it a requirement so that whenever Onyx uses Sunstorm he would also use Stealth Rocks, that way he wouldn't need to ruin his plan by calling out the move. Next was Gyarados. Rex focused on improving Gyarados' Hydro Pump. He wanted it to become something akin to a high-pressure water cutter. It would seriously increase the damage and it would be hard to dodge due to its increased speed. So he pulled out a long thin tube about 30 centimeters in diameter and made Gyarados use Hydro Pump through it while holding it in his mouth. What this would accomplish is simple. By getting Gyarados used to the feeling of using Hydro Pump through a tube, he can concentrate on the pressure. Once he is able to cut a stone cleanly in half, he will move on to doing it without the tube. Then it will be done again but with a 28 centimeters in diameter tube, and so on and so forth. Scyther was practicing his slicing technique on a tree and then he would spar with Machoke every so often. Scyther leaned towards speed heavily and it would most likely be something he would carry through even after evolving into a scissor. So Rex decided to focus on that by having Scyther flap his wings once per step, instead of flying around. What this would do is lighten the weight per step, maximizing the power of each step while minimizing the amount of weight his legs have to push forward. I got him to do squats, leg press and other leg exercises made for explosive movement and change in direction. For Weepinbell, it was about increasing the amount poison, sleep and paralysis powder he can release at one time. He wanted to see if Weepinbell could make it traceless and invisible by changing the color of the powders when he releases it. It worked to a small extent but it was still visible. Rex racked his brain when he heard the system's solution. Host can spread powder moves in minuscule quantities throughout the entirety of the battle. By spreading it on the ground it will be traceless and invisible, but as soon as a Pokémon steps in it, it will take effect. Naturally, flying types can resist this method along with moves that change the terrain. Rex was surprised since this was a vastly different way of approaching it but doable. Rex put it into practice and told Weepinbell to continuously spread different powder moves around the battlefield at all times, only stopping when performing another move before resuming. After a bit of practice, Rex tried it on a clueless Machoke and it worked. Machoke was poisoned before long. Machoke was naturally confused before staring at Rex waiting for an answer. Rex pointed at his feet and explained the concept. Machoke laughed and clapped in praise before getting a full heal and went off to train his aura again. Soon night time came and after dinner, everyone went to sleep before continuing their journey tomorrow. The next morning after a hearty breakfast, Rex set off again and battled the multitude of people coming through Route 4. He tried Weepinbell's new strategy and all land Pokémon fell prey to at least one of his powder moves. The trainers were clueless the entire time even after they lost. Rex was very happy with the result and soon made it to Cerulean City where he would be fighting his next gym battle against Misty's three sisters. Daisy, Violet, and Lily made up the water-type gym. Rex was excited about the gym and quickly made his way to the Pokémon Center to call Professor Oak as usual. When the call finally came through, Rex was greeted by Oak, who was eating noodles. Oak: Rex, nice to see you. I assume you are at Cerulean City by now? He asked while slurping his noodles. The sound made Rex cringe before talking. Rex: that's right, tomorrow I'll be taking on the first gym. What about Ash and Gary, have they started their journey yet? He asked curiously. It had been about 2 weeks or so by now. Oak: yes, that's right, Gary chose Squirtle and that foolish Ash slept in and had to take the spare Pikachu I had around here. He said, sighing slightly before chuckling. Rex: I see. That's fine, it's better than nothing, right? He said. Oak: yes, that's right, at least it's not a Bellsprout, ah ha ha. He laughed heartedly, thinking that Rex would laugh at his joke. Rex's face turned black in anger as he caught a Bellsprout. What was wrong with that? Seeing Rex not laughing, Oak soon composed himself and started to talk about his experiments, seemingly oblivious to Rex's grim face. Soon they ended the call. Rex: fuck you, old man, tch, dissing Bellsprout. He said indignantly before walking towards the closest hotel to stay for 2 nights. The next morning, Rex made his way out of the hotel and went to the nearest cafe for breakfast before heading to the gym. Daisy, Violet, and Lily were the gym leaders and also performers, which he found interesting. He hoped that they weren't performing since that day they wouldn't take challenges. Sadly, that seemed to be the case as a multitude of people swarmed to the gym. This was due to the fact that the gym also served as a performance stage. Rex made his way over anyway since he wanted to make sure. If there wasn't a performance today, then he would challenge them. If there was, then he would watch it, look around the city and challenge the gym the next day before leaving. Walking towards the line of people, Rex asked the nearest person for information. It turned out that there was indeed a performance today and Rex would have to wait till tomorrow. He was upset since he was excited about the battle, but he still waited in line and bought a ticket to see the show nonetheless. He walked in and found his spot in the stands on the 2nd floor overlooking the stage. As there was no battle here today, there was now a much more decorated and presentable platform that was going to be used for performances. 20 minutes later, 3 stunning beauties walked in from the side doors in their colorful outfits that showed off their curves. They chucked out their Pokémon and walked to the center of the stage before pulling out a microphone. Daisy: hello everyone. Today is our weekly performance. We hope you enjoy it, she said cheerfully before putting the microphone to the side. Violet and Lily spread out to different corners with Daisy. Daisy performed rain dance with Seeking and began to do tricks and flips while using moves in a stunning performance. Lily performed Ice Beam on the stage with Seal and started to slide around and do spins and jumps as if it was ice skating. Violet got Shelder to use Bubble so that the light would be refracted into different directions, seemingly like several disco balls suspended in the air. Rex was impressed by their performance, and after several routines, the performance ended an hour later. Rex walked out satisfied with what he saw and left with a smile as he walked around the city before going to a massage place to treat his Pokémon. They had been training hard and they needed rest and relaxation every now and then in order to be in the best fighting condition possible. Soon Rex walked back to his hotel after eating dinner at some local restaurant and slept early. The next morning he walked towards the gym and found that it was taking on challenges. Rex walked in and found a receptionist doing her own thing on a computer. She lifted her head as she noticed Rex walk in. Rex, hello, I'm here to challenge the gym. Can you please inform the gym leaders? He asked calmly. The receptionist nodded and walked away before coming back soon after. Receptionist, you may enter, the gym leaders are ready to face you, she said as she pointed her hand towards the doors that lead to the battlefield. Rex nodded and walked in through the sliding doors and found himself facing the same three beauties from before. They were wearing bikinis that showed a ton of skin. Seeing a handsome man walk in attracted the attention of the three beauties. Violet, look here sisters, we have a good-looking stud here, she said with a slight grin as she looked at Rex. Rex didn't seem to mind and just stood there with his hands in his pockets. Violet, not much of a talker are you? Bummer, she said disappointedly before proceeding to explain the rules. It was a one-on-one battle and Rex would have to verse all three of them back to back. He was surprised but happy since he could get to fight stronger trainers. Daisy, do you agree to the rules? She asked. Rex nodded and moved towards the edge of the pool where the battlefield was. It had a small platform in the middle of the pool in case the challenger used land Pokémon. Rex took out a Pokeball and grinned before throwing it out. The Pokeball landed on the small platform and exploded into a bright light before a 1.8-meter Machoke came out. Violet, who was up first, was stunned mid-throw as she looked at the monstrously tall Machoke in front of her. He was black and gold and looked vastly different to Machokes she had seen before. She soon snapped out of it and sent out Shelder, who landed in the water and started to swim around at a fast speed. What was intriguing was the way it moved in the water. It swam backwards and opened and closed its shell in order to accelerate. Rex was surprised by its movement but didn't really care much for it. What he wanted to know was if Shelder with its shell closed could effectively resist any attack. According to the professor, its hard shell repels any kind of attack. It is vulnerable only when its shell is open. He wanted to experiment on the Shelder as it could serve as a good punching bag for Machoke. That is if it can defend in the first place. Rex told Machoke about Shelder, to which Machoke grinned evilly at the little clam. Violet was disturbed by Machoke's grin and began to get wary. Violet, Shelder, keep your distance for now and use water gun, she said decisively. It would be suicide to take Machoke head on. Shelder, who was swimming around, stopped, aimed at Machoke and sent a quick beam of water at him. Rex smiled at this and so did Machoke. Rex, Machoke, use Ice Punch to freeze the water stream, he said calmly. Machoke waited for the stream of water to come into attacking range before he punched it head on. The result was surprising to Violet. Machoke's punch was so cold that it instantly froze the water, making it look like an ice spike. Rex, Machoke, grab it and throw it at Shelder, he said. Machoke picked up the beam of ice in one hand and winded his arm back as much as possible. Machoke looked like a bow that was fully drawn. Machoke's arm flashed forward and in an instant, a boom was heard as the piece of ice was thrown like a javelin at incredible speed. Violet, who was seeing this, freaked out. Violet, Shelder, quickly close your shell. She yelled hurriedly. Violet, Shelder, quickly close your shell. She yelled hurriedly. Shelder reacted just in time and closed its shell just as the frozen water hit him. Shelder didn't sustain any damage, but it was sent flying into the water, causing several waves to stir. Rex, good reaction speed, but what's the point if it acts like a sandbag? Machoke, use bulk up repetitively. Let's see how long she can hide. He said mockingly while staring at Violet intently. Violet was struggling, she didn't think that Rex would counter her like that. She was lucky that Shelda's shell was impenetrable, otherwise it would have done some serious damage. But it didn't matter now, she was being forced to act since Machoke had started to use bulk up. She could not afford to let him do that, or it would be disastrous for not only her but her sisters as well. Violet, Shelda, use hydro pump to disrupt Machoke, she said with furrowed brows. Shelda stopped moving once again and blasted a much more powerful jet of water. Rex smiled seeing this. By now, Machoke had pulled off a successful bulk up and was much stronger. Rex, Machoke, use light screen and then thunder punch, he said quickly. Machoke went into action and set up a light screen that would negate 50% of the power from special moves. Then he started running forward as dark blue lightning crackled on his fists and arms. He met the hydro pump midway and smashed his fist forward. Both attacks collided, causing a cloud of steam to rise. Rex, Machoke, use bullet punch, he said. He chose the move since Machoke had the ability No Guard. Nothing can obstruct the attacks when the ability is active. Machoke, still in the steam cloud, sprinted forward in a seemingly random direction. Soon Machoke smashed his fist covered in steel energy forward, ripping through the steam to find a lost Shelda standing there. The attack was successful and actually caused damage to Shelda since its shell was open. The steam cloud was blown away by the impact of the hit, revealing the combatants. Machoke was standing there silently while looking at the collapsed Shelda. Violet was shocked since she didn't think about the No Guard ability. Shelda struggled for a few seconds before getting up again. Rex nodded in admiration. It's hard to take a hit from Machoke, albeit a weak one, since he didn't want to cause irreparable damage to the poor Pokemon. But he wanted to move on, so he decided to end this. Rex, Machoke, use Thunder Punch. Violet shook her head. It would not work. Violet, Shelda, close your shell. Shelda closed it and stood there, but the attack never came. Rex, Machoke, now. Grab its tongue and yank it back. He yelled with a massive grin on his face. Violet didn't have time to react before Machoke appeared in front of Shelda and pulled on its tongue that was sticking out of its closed shell. Machoke yanked its tongue, which forced it to open its shell due to the pain. Rex, now. Thunder Punch, he shouted. Machoke raised his fist as bigger sparks of blue lightning crackled on his fist before smashing it down on Shelda's now revealed face. It was an instant KO. Violet did not expect this at all. She didn't think Rex would be able to perceive the flaws in her Pokemon so quickly. She sighed before returning her Shelda to his Pokeball and walking to the side. Daisy walked up next and stood where Violet stood. She pulled out her Pokeball and threw it as Big Seeking appeared in the water with a splash. Daisy didn't even say anything and immediately went on the offensive. Daisy, Seeking, use Mega Horn, she said quickly, trying to not leave any room for Rex to react. Seeking dived down and sped towards Machoke before jumping out of the water and hitting him with Mega Horn. Rex just smiled and shook his head. Rex, Machoke, catch it, he said calmly. Machoke did just that. He took the hit and caught the Seeking effortless before holding him in the air. Rex, now use Vital Throw. Machoke jumped up high and spun rapidly before throwing Seeking back into the platform at incredible speed. Seeking smashed into the platform, bounced and fell into the water. Daisy, Seeking, use Rain Dance and then Aqua Ring. The weather began to change inside the gym and soon, a downpour started. Seeking then formed a ring of water that allowed it to heal slowly. This brought a smile to Daisy's face. Rex, what are you smiling for? Do you think this will help you? You disappoint me, he said sadly before commanding Machoke. Rex, Machoke, use Thunder Punch on the water. You can put in a little bit more effort. Not too much though, I don't feel like having fish for dinner, he said while chuckling. Daisy was indignant and incredibly offended to be looked down on this much, but before she could say anything, Machoke disappeared and reappeared at the edge of the platform. He then smashed his fist into the water as massive blue snakes of lightning ran into the water and spread everywhere. Seeking had nowhere to hide and was immediately shocked unconscious. Rex shook his head in disappointment, but it was what it was. He returned Machoke to his Pokeball since that was more than enough for today. This surprised the sisters as they couldn't comprehend why Rex would take such a strong Pokemon off the battlefield. Rex threw the next Pokeball out and a massive 13.5 meters tall, blood-red Gyarados appeared towering over everyone. The sisters were aghast at the sight. They had never seen such a large Gyarados before. Lily, who was up next, was scared stiff as she stared at Gyarados. She threw out her Pokeball and Seal came out and went into the water with a splash. Seal, who was initially confident and arrogant, immediately became silent as an enormous aura smashed into his face. Seal looked at the Gyarados and felt intense fear. Rex, so this is the full extent of Intimidate, huh? He asked himself while nodding in satisfaction as he looked at the expressions on Lily and Seal's faces. Rex Gyarados use Hydro Pump, he said quickly. With Rain Dance still active, he would probably win in one move. He wanted to test out Gyarados' Hydro Pump that they had been working on. Gyarados didn't hesitate and formed a small circle of water that gave of horrendous amounts of power. Gyarados looked at Seal, who was shivering intensely, and launched it. He took away some of the power at the last moment or Seal would have died. The Hydro Pump rushed towards Seal at a speed so fast it was barely visible. Lily didn't even have the time to voice out Protect when the attack landed. All she saw was a shadow zoom past her and then an explosion was heard. She turned around to see Seal lodged firmly into the wall, completely unconscious. Lily saw the result of the last hit and went pale with fright. She returned the unconscious Seal back to his Pokeball and looked at Gyarados in terror. How was such power even possible? She was disappointed in herself for not putting up a better fight. Rex looked at her and walked up before patting her on the shoulder. Rex, it was a good fight. My Pokemon are just too strong for this gym. But don't let that stop you. For every loss you take, something is gained. Learn from this experience, and make sure not to repeat it again. I see a lot of potential in you three. There will be strong trainers coming to test their mettle for this year's league tournament. I suggest you work hard, he said before looking at Violet. Rex, the badge please, he said, extending his hand out. Violet snapped out of her daze and walked towards Rex before handing him the Cascade badge. Violet, did you mean what you said just now? She asked seriously. Rex, yes, I wouldn't lie, he said before walking away. Naturally, it was a half-truth. They had potential in them, just not for gym battles. They were very good at being performers. He just never specified what he meant. With a smile, he walked out of the gym and looked up at the cloudless sky before heading towards Cerulean City's exit. Back in the gym, while the three beauties were contemplating his words, a smaller girl on the second floor was pale as she continued to look at where Gyarados was. She overheard what Rex said and became determined to be a better gym leader than her sisters when she was older. Rex was thinking about going to Vermilion City but stopped himself since he wanted to go to Rock Tunnel and train a bit before heading to Lavender Town. He decided to look around the city before going to the Pokemart to buy the food he needed for Onyx. When he arrived at the food section, he saw tons of different metals up for sale. The system did a quick scan and identified the best one for maximum growth. What surprised Rex was that it wasn't one of the most expensive. He asked the system and was informed that this specific brand had extra minerals that would allow for boosted growth compared to the more expensive ones that were simply a scam. After buying all that was needed, he went to his hotel and took a shower before hopping on his bike and riding off onto Route 9, where he would spend the next 2 days. He camped with his Pokémon, ate, slept and trained. Rex and Machoke would sit on the ground facing each other cross-legged and meditate while practicing aura. They could vaguely sense each other, but it was too unclear. And the only reason they were even able to achieve this much was because they were so close to each other. Naturally, there was an upside to this. The training was speeding up with the help of the system. Machoke had grown to 1.9 meters, which never ceased to amaze Rex. Gyarados and Scyther had stayed the same in terms of height, but they still got stronger. Weepinbell reached 1.5 meters tall and was much stronger than before. Rex was happy with the progress his Pokémon were making. He spent the next 3 days like this, which was one more than expected, but it was due to wanting to extend their training for a bit. Rex soon got back on his bike the next morning and rode off to Rock Tunnel, where he would train his Pokémon even further against stronger opponents before heading to Lavender Town. He was thinking of facing off against Zapdos, but it was far too early to do that even with Onix on his team. He would face the legendary birds after he had collected all the badges in order to train his Pokémon. When he finally arrived at Rock Tunnel, he was met with a bunch of trainers that were excavating for fossils just like in Mount Moon. Although there were many of them, there didn't seem to be any results. Rex walked towards one of them and asked why they were here instead of Mount Moon. "Minor, it's simple, lad. There will probably be too many people there at Mount Moon now that Team Rocket is gone, and since there were some in Mount Moon, some guessed that there must be some here as well," he said confidently before leaving, not wasting any more time talking to Rex since it might cost him a fossil. Rex could only sigh and keep walking. He heard some trainers that came here to try out their luck that Lavender Town was attacked by Team Rocket and that the Pokémon Tower, which served as a gravesite, was turned into their hideout. Rex would take a look when he went over, but just as he was thinking, the ground beneath him began to shake. Rex turned around to see dozens of wild Pokémon rushing towards the miners and trainers. He figured that it was probably due to them suddenly intruding on the habitat of many Pokémon, making them upset. Rex sighed as he was once again caught in the middle. He pulled out a Pokeball and threw it out. A massive 15-meter-tall Onix came out and roared loudly. The miners and trainers freaked out when they saw him. They thought that another one was behind them, startling them into fleeing in different directions. Rex looked at the fleeing crowd and did not clarify anything. It wouldn't have helped anyway, they were too scattered and freaked out to pay attention to what he had to say. "Rex Onix, use Rock Slide on the left and right sides of the cave walls," he said while pointing at both sides of the cave. The reason he did so was because he wanted to funnel the stampeding Pokémon to slow them down a bit. Onix looked towards the roaring Pokémon and began to channel his energy before projecting it outwards. Suddenly, massive rocks began to take shape as an unknown gravity field appeared and sucked the earth out of the ground. Onix sent these newly formed rocks hurtling towards the walls, making the cave smaller. The stampeding Pokémon were now being funneled into a much tighter corridor-type passage. Rex Onix use Sandstorm. Onix once again channeled energy before expanding it outwards, making the rubble and small pieces of rock rush into the air. The terrain was soon covered in a revolving sand cloud that obstructed the vision of the Pokémon. Onix limited it to the stampeding Pokémon and made sure not to encompass the people, as that would only make the situation worse. Rex Onyx use Sand Tomb, he said. Onyx charged up his energy a third time before sweeping it towards the Pokémon. In addition to the Sandstorm, Sand Tomb was released on a much larger scale than normal, which increased the damage. Soon all the Pokémon were immobilized due to the huge amounts of sand obstructing their movements. They could only retreat and not advance. Rex looked at the scene and sighed lightly before walking away while returning Onyx to his Pokeball. He spent the next day in the cave training his Pokémon in the dark in order to increase their awareness, which proved to be beneficial and effective. Soon he exited the cave and made his way down Route 10, where he would be catching his next Pokémon. As he cycled down the dirt road, he came upon a small lake that was just big enough to fit Gyarados, and that it was a good place to camp down and train while he finds his next addition to the team. Setting up the tent, Rex cooked himself and his Pokémon their dinner. He trained with Machoke as usual and found that he was able to sense Machoke much clearer. He also found that he was able to move about half of his aura to any intended part of his body, which meant that he was getting closer to reaching the next level. Machoke seemed to be a bit above Rex and was able to move about 3/5 ths of his aura. Rex's other Pokémon were training as per usual, doing their own thing. Weepinbell had spread out sleeping, poison and paralysis powder all around the camp and informed Rex and his other Pokémon about which areas weren't covered, so that if they wanted to walk somewhere they didn't accidentally walk into it. Rex was surprised by Weepinbell's actions but thought it was fine since it could serve as practice and as a barrier against other Pokémon. Plus, Weepinbell's powder moves have been getting much more potent as of late. Rex went to sleep since it was not time to go looking for his Pokémon. Gyarados could be heard splashing now and then, and Scyther would sit at the highest point on top of the tallest tree and overlook the camp in case of an intruder. Machoke was sitting cross-legged. No one knew if he was sleeping or training. All they knew was that they felt fear whenever they got close to the tent due to Machoke's aura. The next morning, as usual, Rex cooked breakfast and set the training for the day before walking off into the woods with Machoke. The Pokémon that he was after was Growlithe. Incredibly strong and fast Pokémon, and with his training it would become a monster. He needed a fire type since he had the two other core typings. And who better than an Arcanine? As Rex and Machoke trekked through the forest, somewhere else not too far away a Growlithe was being chased by a Nidoking. The little dog Pokémon tried to fight but didn't stand a chance and had to run away. Luckily it was fast enough to maintain a constant 5-meter distance between them. It ran for its life, jumping over logs and rocks, but no matter what it did it could not get away. As it looked back to see the evil grin on the Nidoking's face, he failed to see the small rock in front of it and tripped. Falling to the ground, it had no time to react before Nidoking used Horn Attack, sending him flying. The Growlithe howled in pain as it tried to get up with shaky legs. It just managed to get up when it got hit again with a double kick, smashing him into the tree directly behind him. Growlithe no longer had the strength to get up and could only see the Nidoking sporting a triumphant smile while walking towards him slowly. Growlithe tried as hard as it could to get up but could no longer move. It was really a miracle he was even awake. Just as he was sinking into despair, a firm yet gentle voice came from right next to him. "Machoke, you can relax, kid. You will not be dying here today," said Machoke in his language as he chuckled. Growlithe was shocked and barely turned its head to see a 1.9-meter tall black Machoke standing next to him with a grin. Next to the Machoke was a young human in white and black, calmly smiling at him. Rex walked forward and petted the Growlithe before turning to Machoke. "Rex, we have found our new family member. You know what to do as his big brother, don't you, Machoke?" he asked him with a sinister grin. Seeing that grin, the corners of Machoke's own lips rose upwards as he turned to stare at the incoming Nidoking. Machoke punched his palm and cracked his knuckles before stretching his neck very human-like. He swung his arm in a circle while jumping up and down before disappearing from his spot. Nidoking, who still had a grin on its face, didn't even have time to think before it got lifted off of the ground. The sudden weightlessness confused it before feeling increasing amounts of pressure on its neck. It managed to lower its head just enough to see an oversized Machoke lifting him off the ground by the neck. Machoke, seeing how light Nidoking's was when he implemented aura into his arm, was exhilarated. His arm began to bulge as he used bulk up, which lessened the weight even further, and then winded his arm back in a throwing motion before throwing all 65 kilograms Nidoking through the air, disappearing from sight. Growlithe, who say how Machoke manhandled the Nidoking that had been terrorizing the local Pokemon, was shocked stiff. Machoke came back before patting Growlithe's head and returning to Rex's side. Growlithe took his eyes off Machoke and turned his gaze towards Rex, who was now sitting against the trunk of a tree with a piece of grass in between his lips. He looked like he was one with nature as he sat there leisurely without care. Rex smiled and waved his hand, signaling Growlithe to get closer. Growlithe, seeing how strong Rex was, did not hesitate, as it would be able to escape anyway. "Rex, you don't need to worry, little one. We were just looking for a brave little Growlithe like yourself. I just didn't think I would find such a resilient and tough one," he said with genuine praise. Growlithe raised its head proudly and barked happily at the compliment. Rex chuckled softly before taking out a Pokeball and placing it on the ground in front of Growlithe. "Rex, I know what it feels like to be weak and defenseless, having to be forced to run away from others. I also know how much you want to get stronger, which I can help you with," he said truthfully as he recalled memories from his previous life. Awakening from his melancholic state, he stared expectantly at Growlithe. Growlithe looked at Machoke, who was next to Rex, with a questioning look. Machoke chuckled just like Rex would and walked forward before patting his head. "Machoke, what he said is true. After all, I was trained by him, and look how strong I have gotten," he said in the Pokemon language as he began to flex his muscles. Rex laughed at the scene since it reminded him of bodybuilders posing when competing. Machoke heard him laugh and turned around and throw a rock at his head, which Rex nodded while giving him a thumbs up. "Rex, 10 points for effort, 0 for accuracy," he said with an even louder laugh. Growlithe was astounded at how they behaved as he observed Machoke throwing increasingly larger things to make up for his lack of accuracy. Rex could be seen bouncing all over the place as he dodges while laughing. Growlithe looked at the Pokeball that was still on the ground and walked up to it before tapping its head on the button. Soon it was sucked inside, and before long it was captured effortless. Rex and Machoke froze mid-movement and turned mechanically to look at Growlithe's ball. They turned to each other and laughed as they walked over with a hand over each other's shoulders. Rex picked up the Pokeball and threw it up before an orange Growlithe appeared and landed on top of Machoke's shoulder and sitting down comfortably. Rex turned around and scanned Growlithe for its stats. Name: Growlithe the puppy Pokemon. O level: 20. O bond: 70%. O height: 0.7 m. O HP: 80. O attack: 100. O defense: 65. O SP: ATK: 100. O SP: definite: 70. O speed: 90. O ability: intimidate, flash fire. O moves: morning sun, ember, leer, howl, fire fang, agility. Rex was quite happy with the stats and move sets. He was especially happy with the flash fire ability since it would be very helpful against Blaine on Cinnabar Island. Nodding its satisfaction, Rex, Machoke and Growlithe walked back to the camp where all of the Pokémon got acquainted with Growlithe. After that, Rex took Growlithe away for some training. Rex would focus on its speed and energy manipulation. Arcanine was a powerful and very fast Pokémon, so he wanted to prioritize these. He would strap weights to Growlithe and make him run around with them. He started off light and would increment it as he got stronger. For energy manipulation, it was a mixture between mediation and using fire moves while under Gyarados' rain dance so that it's harder. He also got Machoke to teach Growlithe about energy manipulation as he was very gifted at it. After a couple of days of training, Growlithe was settling in very nicely and Rex thought it was time to reach Lavender Town. He heard about Team Rocket's antics in Lavender Town, which made him angry. One thing is to be annoying, and another is to tarnish the resting place of dead Pokémon. He promised himself that he wouldn't kill them, but he would disable them for life. With a foul mood at the thought of Team Rocket, Rex recalled all his Pokémon and cycled towards Lavender Town at a faster pace. By sundown, he had made it to the Pokémon Center and had Nurse Joy heal up Growlithe. "Man, have you heard? There is mention of a ghost appearing in the Pokémon Tower lately." "Women, really?" she exclaimed in surprise. "Man, yeah, that right, and a lot of people have said that they have seen it," he said while shaking his head. The conversation between the two caught Rex's attention. Rex, a new type of ghost Pokémon maybe, he thought while trying to recall anything. He walked over and asked the couple anyway. "Rex, excuse me. Is what you said about the ghost sightings real?" he said skeptically. "Man, I haven't seen it myself, but everyone is talking about it," he confirmed. Rex looked at the couple with a glint in his eye. "Rex, where is this Pokémon Tower exactly?" he asked. He didn't want to run around aimlessly. "Women, here, I'll show you," she said while waving her arm at Rex, signaling for him to follow. They walked to the Pokémon Center's window and the women pointed towards the tower covered in fog. It was several floors tall, with each one getting slightly smaller the higher you look up. With grey-colored walls and its peak covered by clouds, Rex was surprised and curious. "Rex, so the ghost you mentioned, is it a Pokémon then?" he asked. "Man, seems like it, but it's really just a rumor," he said, not confirming nor denying, which only increased his curiosity. "Women, so do you actually believe in ghosts?" she asked jokingly. Rex, not really, there hasn't been a confirmed sighting of one before, he said truthfully. As far as he knew anyway. "Women, maybe not, I guess that white hand resting on your shoulder isn't real either, huh?" she said with a smile. Rex's face changed color as he turned around only to see empty space. "Rex, funny. Very funny," he said sourly before turning back around only to find no one there anymore. Rex rubbed his eyes in shock before looking around for the couple. He even used aura and nothing. He pulled out Machoke and asked him to sense the area and still found nothing. Rex actually almost shit himself at the revelation. He was talking to actual ghosts. "Rex, fuck me dead," he said as he shivered involuntarily before going to pick up Growlithe. As Rex picked up his Pokeball and was about to walk out when he heard Nurse Joy's voice. "Nurse Joy, are you perhaps thinking about going to the Pokémon Tower?" she asked. Rex turned around and walked back towards Nurse Joy. "Rex, yes, that's right, since I came all this way, I thought I might as well check it out." "Nurse Joy, then, before you visit the Pokémon Tower, I strongly recommend you check out the Pokémon House," she suggested. Rex asked about the directions and soon left the Pokémon Center and walked over to the Pokémon House Nurse Joy recommended. Rex arrived in front of a white house with wooden supports. It had a short flight of stairs that led to a brown wooden door. As Rex walked up the stairs, they creaked lightly with each step, seemingly announcing his arrival. After walking in, he found the interior to be just like outside. Clean white walls, outlined with wood, and a yellow checkered floor with sparse furniture lying around. "Rex, anyone here?" he asked while raising his voice just enough to be heard through the house. "Stranger, yes," a girl yelled as she walked through the door. It was a young girl with very light brown hair tied up with 2 strands falling to the side of her face, perfectly framing it. "Rex, I was wondering what this place is about. I was recommended here by Nurse Joy," he said in confusion. "Girl, oh. So, you mean no one told you? This is a place where abandoned or orphaned Pokémon are taken care of," she informed. "Rex, abandoned Pokémon?" he asked, surprised by the revelations. He always wondered where the Pokémon that didn't sync up well with their trainers go. He knew that starters could go back to the region's professor, and that other Pokémon could be released just like Ash did. But he didn't know that there were institutions for taking care of them as well. "Girl, yes, here, let me show you," she said before leading the way through the door she appeared from and into another room. They walked in to find small wooden enclosures with 1 or 2 Pokémon in them. Unlike the floor in the entrance, here the floor was wooden and had padding where the Pokémon were, probably for comfort. Rex could see people taking care of Pokémon with big smiles on their faces. He observed that the Pokémon also had wide smiles which lifted his spirits. There were Oddish, Vulpix, Growlithe, Bellsprouts and so on. It was full of them. "Rex, I had no idea there would be so many here," he said warmly. "Girl, you should talk to the founder of this place, Mr. Fuji," she said with a smile before getting downcast. "Girl, Mr. Fuji says that lots of people around the world think of Pokémon as nothing but tools or accessories. Did you know that this actually used to be Mr. Fuji's own home? He remodeled it so that it can accommodate the needs of the Pokémon." A frown starting to form on her face. "Rex, Mr. Fuji seems to be a good person. I would like to meet him," he said with a genuine smile. He liked people who cared for Pokémon as deeply as him, so hearing about Mr. Fuji increased his curiosity. "Girl, oh, where are my manners? My name is Raina," she said while patting her chest. "Rex, nice to meet you. The name is Rex," he said with a smile. Raina soon got downcast again before speaking. "Raina, Mr. Fuji is a kind man and therefore went to convince the Team Rocket people to leave the Pokémon Tower. It is said that they do not allow anyone to enter. It's so unfair. The people of this town have lost their Pokémon and cannot pay their respects like before due to Team Rocket," she said as they continued to walk before reaching a specific pen. Inside, Rex saw a Cubone huddled in the corner looking around vigilantly. "Rex, what's wrong with this little one?" he said, turning his head towards Raina as he pointed at Cubone. "Raina, oh. This is Cubone. Its mother died at the hands of Team Rocket in order to protect him. Mr. Fuji found him and took him home where they bonded. Mr. Fuji is the only one Cubone lets his guard down with." Rex, who had a hand resting on the railing, squeezed so hard the wood snapped. "Team Rocket killing Pokémon." His aura burst out, causing a small pressure wave to explode outwards. Machoke, who was in his Pokeball, sensed the change and forced his way out before looking around and then at Rex. He placed his hand on Rex's shoulder and shook him gently. Rex, who was momentarily blinded by anger, calmed down at the sight of his best friend. Rex let out a breath and nodded at Machoke gratefully. "Rex, I'm glad to have you as my partner, Machoke," he said emotionally. Machoke nodded with a grin before lightly tapping Rex's chest with his fist before returning to his pokeball. Raina, who saw the colossal Machoke, freaked out, not to mention the pressure that weighed on her like a mountain just now. She stared at Rex in amazement. She thought that maybe Rex could help get Mr. Fuji back. Raina, I have no right to ask this of you, Rex, but could you help rescue Mr. Fuji? He has been taken hostage by Team Rocket due to his failed attempt at convincing them to leave, she said teary-eyed. Rex looked at Cubone and then at Raina before turning around. Rex, relax, Team Rocket will be out of the tower in the next hour, he said, waving his hand as he walked out the door. Raina was shocked at his statement, but thinking back to the dark figure towering above her, she got a sudden shiver up her spine. Rex walked out of the house and finished his sentence. Rex, or more like they will need to be carried out, he said with a vicious smile. If anyone saw this they would probably shit themselves. Rex made his way over to the Pokémon Tower leisurely as he assessed his point of entry. He looped the tower a couple of times before deciding to just send it and go through the front door. He pulled out his Pokeballs and threw them all out. Gyarados appeared, creating a small shockwave with its roar. Scyther zoomed into the sky before looking around. Weepinbell stood to Rex's side ready for orders. Growlithe appeared at the same time as Machoke and instantly hopped on top of his head. Machoke stood next to Rex leisurely with a simple smile on his face, perfectly imitating Rex. Onix towered next to Gyarados, looking around with vigilance. Rex, Gyarados, use Rain Dance over the building. You can attack any person who comes out of the tower wearing black with a red R on their front, he said with a grin. Gyarados had a glint in his eye at the order and nodded seriously. Rex turned to Weepinbell. Rex, Weepinbell, you will be putting poison, sleep and paralysis powder on the exits. Make sure that the entire area is covered. You will be staying on the first floor and waiting in case anyone tries to escape. Weepinbell nodded with determination. Rex turned to Scyther. Rex, Scyther, you will go around the floors as the vanguard. Don't be spotted, take out unsuspecting enemies but don't get caught. Be careful of a couple of ghost-type troublemakers. If they try to interrupt your work, knock them out. Scyther nodded and got ready. Rex turned to Machoke and Growlithe. Rex, you two will be staying by my side, he said before turning to Onix. Rex, Onix, you will go with Gyarados and stay guard outside from the other end of the tower, he said after much thought. He was too big to come inside with Rex after all. All the Pokémon nodded before going into action. The originally nice cloudless blue sky instantly turned dark and gloomy as Gyarados produced a powerful storm that covered the town. Rex was shocked. He didn't expect Gyarados to go this far, but it was better. Gyarados had some kind of talent that involved being able to track anything that his water touched. Rex asked the system about it. The system explained that due to the constant refining of the move using Gyarados's energy, he is now able to track where his energy is within a certain distance. In other words, due to Rain Dance being created with Gyarados's energy, he can track whatever the rain touches. Rex thought about the jutsu Pain used, which allowed him to sense whatever the water touched. Rex was very happy about the range increase. This way no Team Rocket members would escape. Rex walked towards the tower confidently with his hands in his pockets and a face resembling the devil. Machoke, remember this day well, little Growlithe, this is the power of our family, he said with a grin. Growlithe was astounded by the aura coming off of all of Rex's other Pokémon. It seemed that they had been restraining it a bit while he was around. He still felt nothing from Rex or Machoke, which confused him. He only felt comfortable around them. Machoke grinned at Growlithe's expression and walked calmly behind Rex like a shadow. Rex cracked his neck and knuckles before talking. Rex, it has been a while since I last fought, leave a couple to me, he said while looking at his Pokémon. The Pokémon were surprised since they had never seen Rex fight. They were excited to see him in action. As they entered the tower, they encountered their first Team Rocket member. Grunt, hey! You are not allowed in here, turn around and leave, this is your first and final warning, said the Grunt as he spotted Rex walking in. Rex only chuckled before saying one word. Rex, Weepinbill, he said before a flash of green sped forward before wrapping around the Pokémon besides the Grunt. The Pokémon couldn't even move before it was poisoned and put to sleep. The Grunt was stunned but couldn't worry about it as he saw Rex rushing towards him. Rex rushed forward at incredible speed and thrust his palm forward. The Grunt wasn't expecting Rex to fight himself and couldn't block in time. The palm landed on his stomach, making him spit out saliva as his eyes started bulging. Rex didn't stop and continued by jumping up and spinning rapidly before kicking his leg out towards the Grunt's kidney. Another hit, still in midair, Rex front flipped and landed a heel strike to the top of the Grunt's head, making him drop to the ground face first. The Grunt literally bounced off the ground like a ball. Rex landed and performed a front leg side kick which sent the Grunt, who was in midair, tumbling backwards. This all happened in the span of 10 seconds and the Grunt didn't manage to land a single hit, not once. It was a one-sided beatdown. Even Rex's Pokémon were shocked, except Machoke, who only showed a somewhat uncomfortable expression as if he was reliving some terrible memory. He was remembering all the times he fought with Rex back at Professor Oak's lab. Rex relaxed his body and lowered his leg that remained in the position he kicked the Grunt in. He walked over and looked down at the barely conscious Grunt. Rex, in your next life, try to act like a decent human being, he said with a vicious grin before stomping on the Grunt's neck, breaking it with a crack. Rex waved at his Pokémon and moved forward. Scyther killed the unsuspecting Grunts. Weepinbill made sure to surround the place in powder before moving on to take on the Grunts himself. Rex, Machoke and Growlithe, who was on top of Machoke's head, walked forward leisurely. Whenever Rex wanted to battle a Grunt, he would rush forward telling his Pokémon to back off. The fights were the same as the first Grunt, one-sided beatdowns. As they walked forward, the heavy rain could be heard pouring down onto the walls of the tower, accompanied by the sound of thunder. Inside, a group of demons made their way up. Not even the ghost Pokémon dared to stick their necks out for a peek out of fear of being caught in the crossfire. An shout out to Dende for giving me the idea of coating Vine Whip in powder moves. Shout out to Zasharia_Browning for giving me the idea to let him fight the Grunts instead of his Pokémon. You asked and you shall receive. I originally decided to keep the Grunts barely alive, but seeing so many people wanting their death, I just went for it, LMAO. Rex made his way over to the Pokémon Tower leisurely as he assessed his point of entry. He looped the tower a couple of times before deciding to just send it and go through the front door. He pulled out his Pokeballs and threw them all out. Gyarados appeared, creating a small shockwave with its roar. Scyther zoomed into the sky before looking around. Weepinbill stood to Rex's side ready for orders. Growlithe appeared at the same time as Machoke and instantly hopped on top of his head. Machoke stood next to Rex leisurely with a simple smile on his face, perfectly imitating Rex. Onyx towered next to Gyarados, looking around with vigilance. Rex, Gyarados, use Rain Dance over the building. You can attack any person who comes out of the tower wearing black with a red R on their front, he said with a grin. Gyarados had a glint in his eye at the order and nodded seriously. Rex turned to Weepinbill. Rex, Weepinbill, you will be putting poison, sleep and paralysis powder on the exits. Make sure that the entire area is covered. You will be staying on the first floor and waiting in case anyone tries to escape. Weeping Bill nodded with determination. Rex turned to Scyther. Rex Scyther, you will go around the floors as the vanguard. Don't be spotted, take out unsuspecting enemies but don't get caught. Be careful of a couple of ghost-type troublemakers. If they try to interrupt your work, knock them out. Scyther nodded and got ready. Rex turned to Marchoke and Growlithe. Rex, you two will be staying by my side, he said before turning to Onyx. Rex, Onyx, you will go with Gyarados and stay guard outside from the other end of the tower, he said after much thought. He was too big to come inside with Rex after all. All the Pokémon nodded before going into action. The originally nice cloudless blue sky instantly turned dark and gloomy as Gyarados produced a powerful storm that covered the town. Rex was shocked. He didn't expect Gyarados to go this far, but it was better. Gyarados had some kind of talent that involved being able to track anything that his water touched. Rex asked the system about it. The system explained that due to the constant refining of the move using Gyarados' energy, he is now able to track where his energy is within a certain distance. In other words, due to Rain Dance being created with Gyarados' energy, he can track whatever the rain touches. Rex thought about the Jutsu Pain used, which allowed him to sense whatever the water touched. Rex was very happy about the range increase. This way no Team Rocket members would escape. Rex walked towards the tower confidently with his hands in his pockets and a face resembling the devil. Marchoke, remember this day well, little Growlithe, this is the power of our family, he said with a grin. Growlithe was astounded by the aura coming off of all of Rex's other Pokémon. It seemed that they had been restraining it a bit while he was around. He still felt nothing from Rex or Marchoke, which confused him. He only felt comfortable around them. Marchoke grinned at Growlithe's expression and walked calmly behind Rex like a shadow. Rex cracked his neck and knuckles before talking. Rex, it has been a while since I last fought, leave a couple to me, he said while looking at his Pokémon. The Pokémon were surprised since they had never seen Rex fight. They were excited to see him in action. As they entered the tower, they encountered their first Team Rocket member. Grunt, hey! You are not allowed in here, turn around and leave, this is your first and final warning, said the Grunt as he spotted Rex walking in. Rex only chuckled before saying one word. Rex, Weeping Bill, he said before a flash of green sped forward before wrapping around the Pokémon besides the Grunt. The Pokémon couldn't even move before it was poisoned and put to sleep. The Grunt was stunned but couldn't worry about it as he saw Rex rushing towards him. Rex rushed forward at incredible speed and thrust his palm forward. The Grunt wasn't expecting Rex to fight himself and couldn't block in time. The palm landed on his stomach, making him spit out saliva as his eyes started bulging. Rex didn't stop and continued by jumping up and spinning rapidly before kicking his leg out towards the Grunt's kidney. Another hit, still in midair, Rex front flipped and landed a heel strike to the top of the Grunt's head, making him drop to the ground face first. The Grunt literally bounced off the ground like a ball. Rex landed and performed a front leg side kick which sent the Grunt, who was in midair, tumbling backwards. This all happened in the span of 10 seconds and the Grunt didn't manage to land a single hit, not once. It was a one-sided beatdown. Even Rex's Pokémon were shocked, except Marchoke, who only showed a somewhat uncomfortable expression as if he was reliving some terrible memory. He was remembering all the times he fought with Rex back at Professor Oak's lab. Rex relaxed his body and lowered his leg that remained in the position he kicked the Grunt in. He walked over and looked down at the barely conscious Grunt. Rex, in your next life, Try to act like a decent human being, he said with a vicious grin before stomping on the grunt's neck, breaking it with a crack. Rex waved at his Pokémon and moved forward. Scyther killed the unsuspecting grunts. Weeping Bill made sure to surround the place in powder before moving on to take on the grunts himself. Rex, Machoke and Growlithe, who was on top of Machoke's head, walked forward leisurely. Whenever Rex wanted to battle a grunt, he would rush forward telling his Pokémon to back off. The fights were the same as the first grunt, one-sided beatdowns. As they walked forward, the heavy rain could be heard pouring down onto the walls of the tower, accompanied by the sound of thunder. Inside, a group of demons made their way up. Not even the ghost Pokémon dare to stick their necks out for a peek out of fear of being caught in the crossfire. Shout out to Dende for giving me the idea of coating Vine Whip in powder moves. Shout out to Zasharia_Browning for giving me the idea to let him fight the grunts instead of his Pokémon. You asked and you shall receive. I originally decided to keep the grunts barely alive, but seeing so many people wanting their death, I just went for it, LMAO. Weeping Bill stood in the middle of the room, spreading out his powder moves all over the ground on the first floor. Scyther sped up the stairs and melded into the shadows. Rex, Machoke and Growlithe leisurely walked up the stairs towards the second floor. On the second floor, the same thing happened. Scyther used Double Team and took out all the surrounding grunts that were caught off guard. Naturally, this did not go completely unnoticed, and soon the other grunts were alerted. Machoke put Growlithe on the floor and sped forward to take care of the grunts' Pokémon. Rex fought with the grunts themselves, which were entertaining for him. It had been so long since he could let off some steam, and who better than some low-life scum? Scyther stood back and observed, and only interfered when there was a need. The same thing happened on the third level, although the skill level of the grunts increased. Scyther was still effective, but he was getting noticed quicker. Machoke was having a field day, smashing Pokémon into the walls. Some even broke through them, which sent them flying out of the tower where Gyarados and Onix were waiting. Now and then you could hear the scream of a grunt as he got sent flying through the air by Gyarados' hydro pump or Onix rollout. On the fourth level, there were elite guards which still posed no problem for Machoke, but Scyther could not pick off unsuspecting targets, so he only fought openly with Machoke. Rex was beating the living shit out of the grunts. Some had broken legs, some had broken arms, and some had broken jaws and noses. He never left them intact as their bodies littered the ground. On the 5th and 6th level, there were fewer elite grunts, but they were borderline commander level. Rex was surprised and extremely excited, since he might be able to get some actual combat experience from this. His Pokémon had been training a lot, but they needed experience battling other Pokémon. That was why he rotated his Pokémon in each gym battle. Rex walked up the stairs to find a man sitting on a box talking to a tied-up old man. The old man was bald and had long grey eyebrows and a lightly hunched figure. The man on the box was younger, about 35, and had a scar across his cheek and a much more luxurious suit than the other grunts. Rex stepped forward calmly and walked over to the duo. His footsteps echoed through the silent room. The inaudible discussion between the two was halted as Rex came into sight. They both turned to find a young man with silver-white hair, blue eyes covered in blood, followed by an almost 2-meter-tall shadow. "Rex, sorry, did I interrupt your conversation?" he asked with a grin. The man on the box didn't react absurdly or begin to shout. He simply turned to Rex and took a sip of his tea that was previously hidden by his body. "Commander, not really, I was having a chat with my kind guest here," he said after swallowing his tea and looking at his captive. "Mr. Fuji, I plead you please leave this place. This is a place for the mourning of the dead, it is a sacrilege to tarnish it with your people, he said in a begging tone. Commander, I can't do that, we have found a new type of Pokemon here and we need to catch it, but it's incredibly slippery. I can only ask you to cooperate, he said with a smile. Mr. Fuji, new Pokemon. Why have I not heard of it? I have been here for a long time, he said skeptically. Commander, that is exactly why you are here, sir. After all, you are one of the most knowledgeable about Pokemon. Wasn't it you who helped us with that project? He asked with a smile. Mr. Fuji, I did not help you. You stole my research and destroyed the place, he said indignantly. Commander, same thing, he said shrugging. He turned to Rex and chuckled. Commander, and what are you doing here, kiddo? Beating all the grunts I brought, and such excessive injuries, do you have a grudge against us or something? He asked with intrigue. Rex, Team Rocket has been pissing me off lately, so I thought I would pay you guys a visit when I heard you were in town. But I have to say your hospitality was quite lacking, he said, feigning disappointment. Commander, ha! Cheeky kid. Well, I will have to beat you to a pulp anyway since you have cost me a lot of time, he said with a laugh. He didn't seem at all angry, which contrasted his words. Rex became serious since opponents like this were usually the toughest to beat. Maybe he could push Machoke to the limit, he thought before an excited smile crept on his face. The commander pulled out a Pokeball and lazily threw it out. Toxicroak came out with a pop. Rex was surprised at the Pokemon. This was a Pokemon not native to Kanto, which was rare. Even more excitement burned in his chest. Rex, good. Show me what you have, he said with a laugh. The commander was surprised at the face Rex was making. He looked like a madman who wanted nothing but to fight. But before he could say anything, he heard Rex speak again. Rex, Machoke, maybe for once we can let loose. It will be a shame about the building though, he said with a disheartened sigh. The commander was curious since he didn't see a Machoke anywhere. The shadows in the surrounding moved, and before he could react, a terrifying chuckle could be heard before an almost 2-meter tall Machoke walked out as his steps caused the stone floor to crack slightly. The commander shat a brick at the sight. Commander, is that even a Machoke? Why would you call that monster a Machoke, you dumbass? He screamed in his head. Machoke's eyes shined with a purple hue in the barely lit room. He calmed down after a lot of effort and concentrated on the man in front of him. Rex, let's take this out of the building. I don't want this sacred place hurt due to our fight, he said to the commander. The commander thought about whether it was to his advantage to do so and concluded that it was not. This place was small and restrictive and was too high up from the ground, which could be detrimental if his Toxicroak fell. He therefore nodded and walked down the stairs. Mr. Fuji was about to follow when he was stopped by Rex. Rex, mister, you should stay here and make peace with Marowak. Cubone should be here soon, he said mysteriously before walking away. Mr. Fuji was confused when he saw a small shadow appear in the room after Rex left. It was Cubone who had indeed followed. Rex and the commander left the 7th floor and headed down while Cubone and Mr. Fuji stayed there to finish of their own things. On the way down, the commander grimaced at the sight. All his grunts were on the floor, body parts strewn across the floor. The commander looked at Rex reproachfully but only received a cold smile which made the commander shiver ever so slightly. What a devil, he thought as he continued to descend. The lower they went, the paler the commander got. The same scenarios as the floors above appeared, just on a larger scale every time. Combined with the continuous pelting of the rain and the thunderstorm, made the tower far creepier than usual. The commander noticed that 3 ghosts followed them, but at a respectful distance, unlike usual. This surprised him as he knew these three to be extremely annoying to deal with. But now, they were acting as submissive as a dog. They soon reached the first floor where they met Weeping Bill, who just sat in the middle looking around in boredom. When it saw Rex, it jumped up and sped towards him. Rex smiled at Weeping Bill before patting it and sending him back to his pokeball. They head outside where the rain instantly engulfed them. A massive 14-meter-tall Gyarados appeared suddenly and roared loudly. The commander flinched backwards before Toxicroak jumped in front of Gyarados. Rex laughed at the sight, which caught the attention of the commander, but what Rex did next left him flabbergasted. Rex extended his hand and Gyarados came forward and made contact with his head. Rex smiled and absorbed Gyarados back into his Pokeball. Onix came out of the ground and towered over them before following in Gyarados's example. The commander's mouth was in an O shape due to what he had just watched. Rex didn't stop and walked forward before walking outside of the town right behind the tower. Rex stopped and observed the surroundings before nodding in satisfaction and turned around. Rex, this should be open enough for our fight. I hope that this is your strongest Pokémon. If you have a stronger one, I would like to kindly suggest you bring it out. The commander nodded and returned Toxicroak back to his Pokeball and grabbed another one from his belt. He threw it out with much more energy than before. The Pokeball popped in midair and a green Pokémon came out with a giant plant on its back. Rex was stunned. What he was looking at was actually one of the starters in this region. Venusaur, the seed Pokémon. He didn't expect a Team Rocket member to bring one out, but considering their poison preference, Venusaur was still on their list, so it was unusual but not out of character. Rex, a Venusaur, surprising. It seems that you were holding back severely before her, he said calmly. The commander nodded before looking at the bored Machoke, who didn't even react at the sight of Venusaur. Commander, not that it matters, that monster of yours is still going to be difficult to deal with, he said while pointing at Machoke. Rex chuckled and looked over at Machoke. Rex, he seems to think he can win. Off you go, show him otherwise, he said with a smile. Machoke didn't say anything and just walked forward as shallow footprints were left on the ground. Machoke walked in front of Rex and stretched his neck before crossing his arms over his chest and awaited orders. The commander looked incredibly serious as he cast his gaze at Machoke. Commander Venusaur, this is going to be our toughest fight yet, so let's do our best, he said, very much out of character for a Team Rocket member but a refreshing feeling. Rex, it seems that not all Team Rocket members are useless after all, he commented in his head with a smile still plastered on his face. Commander Venusaur, use Sunny Day, he said quickly. Venusaur reacted quickly and instantly casted a small orb of light that floated at a fast pace and pierced through the stormy sky. The once black sky plagued by dark clouds brightened up as rays of intense sunlight shone through. Soon the dark sky cleared up and with it the sun shone with extra vigor. Rex nodded in acknowledgement. It was a smart move. Rex observed that when Venusaur first came out it was a little down and seemed sluggish, but as soon as the rays of sunlight hit the once slow Pokémon seemed to have been zapped with a gun. It was lively and full of energy as it released a powerful aroma that attracted some Pokémon. It seemed that this battle would have some spectators. Commander Venusaur, use Solar Beam, he shouted with a smile. So far everything was going good for him, which seemed to lessen his nervousness at facing Machoke. Seeing the commander's relaxing face, Rex nodded. The reason that he didn't act was not due to arrogance or being slow, it was simply because he wanted to face his opponent at his best. And a freaked out opponent was no opponent at all. Rex, Machoke, "Time to start the party. Use bulk up and then light screen," he said calmly. Machoke still stood there with his arms crossed as an intense steam rose off his body before his muscles began to grow. Then a small screen made of light appeared all around him, which would stop 50% of the power of any special type moves. The solar beam charged up faster than it would normally be due to the intense light coming from the sunny day. Venusaur sent it shooting towards Machoke at an incredibly fast speed. Rex smiled and didn't say anything. Machoke, seeing the solar beam incoming, raised his arms to intercept the attack. The collision finally happened, and the power behind it was so intense it broke the ground around Machoke, sent pieces of rock and dirt flying everywhere. A shadow was sent flying out from the intense shockwave and smashed into a massive boulder off to the side. Rex looked at the crater in the rock where Machoke laid with no emotion on his face. It was like it was unrelated to him. All that was heard was his words that didn't fit the result. Rex warm-up done. Machoke, who was originally lodged in the boulder, exploded out, smashing the stone in the process. Steam came out of his cuts as his feet cracked the earth. His purple eyes glowed even more intensely as he sported the most twisted grin possible. It was comparable to the Cheshire Cat's. An intense aura exploded out of him and intensified with each step he took. Rex smiled like a maniac. This is the reason I didn't stop him, second stage of aura. Rex laughed loudly as he stared at his own hands. The same aura was coming off of him. Rex system, why did I rank up? He asked. The system designed the training so that both of you can level up at the same time. When you first began training aura, the system created a way to achieve a sort of aura link between the both of you. It is so that if one of you reaches the next level before the other, the one that has achieved their next level will boost the energy level and experience of the other via aura link, it said mechanically. Rex nodded in sudden understanding. He was now able to direct the power of aura all around his body in whichever way he so wished, which boosted his strength massively. He could only imagine what it would have done to Machoke. The reason for letting Machoke take the hit was because he was stuck at a bottleneck and a massive amount of foreign energy was required in order to push him over. Rex could have done it with his other Pokémon, but Machoke, being the battle maniac that he was, didn't accept that way of doing it. He wanted to do it in a battle. Machoke stopped when he reached the same spot where he originally stood. The cuts had become scars which would fade away with rest, but for now it made him that much more menacing. The commander's face was black with shock. He didn't expect a full-power solar beam to fail at knocking out the Machoke. He seemed to have only taken away about half its health. Rex, you should be proud of yourself, you are the second to hurt my Machoke this much, he said with a grin. The commander burst a vein when he heard that. Commander Venusaur, use solar beam again, he shouted hysterically. There was no way Machoke would live another one, or so he thought. And he would be right, except last time Rex purposefully let it hit him, there was a difference. Rex, Machoke, let's test out our aura, use power up punch, he said, punching forward. Machoke started to walk forward before getting into a jog, and soon he was running at full speed right towards Venusaur, who was charging up another solar beam at a fast pace. Venusaur finally charged it up completely and launched it forward. Machoke, seeing the incoming solar beam, dived downwards, causing it to barely miss as he slid under it. He didn't come out unscathed as his back was charred. Machoke pushed upwards with his arms and stood upright again before bursting forward and arriving right next to Venusaur. Machoke didn't give Venusaur any time to react and smashed his fist squarely on Venusaur's face, burying it in the ground. The ground shook intensely from the hit and spider web-like cracks spread in all direction from where Venusaur was half buried. Machoke jumped away out of habit to avoid any sudden attacks, and lucky he did, as a green ball of energy formed on its back before landing where Machoke last stood. Venusaur crawled out of the ground with dirt all over its face. It was severely hurt but managed to get up and back away. Rex was shocked at the defense of Venusaur. After all, it took a full hit from Machoke using Aura. The commander was shocked at the amount of damage Machoke did to Venusaur. After all, he was a rare Venusaur that had much higher defense than usual. Rex, you can't be a simple commander at Team Rocket. I have battled against one before and they were much weaker than you, he said truthfully and full of curiosity. Commander, you are correct. I have been selected as the next admin for Team Rocket, and this was my mission, but you have ruined it, so I have to beat you and give your Pokémon to the boss so that I can keep my chance, he said grimly. Rex, I see. That's why you battled. Whatever the reason, I'm glad I came, or I would have missed such a good fight, he said with a chuckle. Commander, arrogant kid, he spat. Rex only shrugged. It cannot be called arrogance when said by the strong. Arrogance is those who boast without the power to back themselves. Not wanting to waste time with philosophy, he commanded. Rex, Machoke, use bulk up and bullet punch, he said quickly. Machoke's already bulky body grew again, and his right fist became shiny and grey in color. He rushed forward at a much faster pace than before, which caught the commander off guard. Commander, use protect, he said, extending his hand outwards. A round bubble appeared around Venusaur. Machoke, who was at top speed, made contact with the shield, producing a screeching sound like metal against metal. The sudden sound of glass cracking could be heard before protect was broke through. The attack made contact, which sent Venusaur blasting backwards before smashing back into the ground. Venusaur had incredible difficulty getting up, but by some miracle managed it. The commander was shocked at the result. He thought about it before something hit him. No God. He looked at Machoke with helplessness. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel. Also make sure you tell me your recommendation in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.